And we're live. Hello, everyone. It is the pre-show for the 221. No, it's the N10-007 Network Plus study group. What was I thinking? It's Network Plus today. Well, I've got all new Network Plus questions. I spent the weekend writing Network Plus questions. We probably should present some Network Plus questions. We got about 10 minutes before we get started. It's the pre-show. I'm just trying to get my act together here. Looks like I've already recorded the podcast intro. You missed that. It was gripping. Sorry you missed it. Recordings are going here. Recordings are going here. We've got the recording online. The chat room is here. Hey, chat room. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. We've got cameras are all up. I think we're in pretty good shape. Streaming is working for the moment. One never knows. We're never quite sure. So we'll figure it out. What's going on? Glad to see folks checking in the chat room. Hello, everyone. Welcome. We got folks here from Sweden and Maryland and Burbank and Houston, Texas. We've got Nigeria. We've got people around the world checking in. All the questions today are from the Network Plus exam. Talk about that. Hey, Charleston. I haven't been down there in a while. I need to get back to Charleston. That's a beautiful city. Beautiful. Hello, India. Thank you for joining us. We've got plenty of Network Plus to go through. We'll talk about other things as well. This first hour of the study group is me asking you questions. And then in the second half of the study group, you ask me questions. I'll open up the phone lines. I'll take questions from the chat room. We've got folks in Nigeria and Michigan and down the street off Tennessee Street, apparently, Tallahassee. We've got Maryland, my Maryland. Welcome. When will the N10-007 be retired? I'm expecting, quite honestly, the rumors, because it has not been released or announced or anything, but the rumors are exactly 1 year from today. That's the rumors. Now, will it be that? I don't know. We don't know. We're not sure. And until we're told, we don't know. I think there have been people talking with CompTIA support, though, and that's what they've said. But that's why. Why aren't there exam papers for Network Plus from me? I guess you're referring to my practice exams books. Why is there not one for Network Plus? Well, because I never wrote one for Network Plus. My practice exam books are a relatively new addition to all of the things that we offer. And just Network Plus was the last one I did before, last course I did before starting on all of the newer books. So my plan was to, once I finished A Plus and Net Security Plus, is to finally also do Network Plus, and I will be. That's what's on my schedule next. We'll see what happens with that. Will I be talking about subnetting? Probably not. There's very little subnetting on the Network Plus exam. Very little. Well, I know we spend like months, sometimes it feels like months, where we're studying subnetting and doing subnetting, and you might get a question that would require you to know something about subnetting on the exam, or maybe two. Sometimes you might get as many as three. But this is not a Cisco exam. You don't get, subnetting's not every question you get. So it's, in fact, I often tell people if subnetting is just driving you crazy and you just can't make it happen, just skip it. Because what would you lose? Maybe 1, 2, 3 questions? It's a balancing act. I don't want you to skip any questions or any topics, but it's a balancing act if you can spend that time learning other parts of the objectives and effectively cover more ground. You'll actually be better prepared for the Network Plus exam. It's just a numbers game. It's just a time management issue. So that's why. Now, subnetting will absolutely be incredibly important for you in your career. It will be important for you if you take any higher level certifications like Cisco's. It's a skill you will use throughout your career, a valuable skill. So it's always important. One of the things I'm planning to do for this next series of Network Plus videos is to add some other techniques for subnetting. I've already written the presentations out. So some of the more popular ways that people do it, And even my 7-second subnetting is really a style of magic number, just with everything written out. But there are ways to do it in your head. You just kind of get used to it after a while. We figure it out. How important is subnetting? Getting into InfoSec. Well, you never get into information security. You start somewhere else and eventually move into information security. So getting a foundation in networking is incredibly important, which is why we are doing these. So that's it. Do I take all these exams myself? Sometimes. Sometimes I don't. How do I get around the NDA thing with CompTIA? Well, first, I don't really say anything that would be outside the scope of an NDA, even if I was subject to one, because it's not necessary. And secondly, if you don't take the exam, you're not subject to the NDA. So if I don't take the exam, I've thought of I'll not take the exam and therefore won't be subject to the NDA. And then I think over the last 10 years, when have I ever said anything that would have violated the NDA anyway? I never do. Am I not a competitor to their training bundles? Yeah, I guess I can. I am. Yeah. I think everybody who makes content is it's kind of a weird competitive thing that CompTIA has. CompTIA makes their own training materials, but they have partners that make training materials and other third parties. Is there naturally a conflict in place? Yes, there is, but I'm not in charge of that business. So what do I know? They can do whatever they like. I think there's a place for all of us, and it works great. Do they like me? I hope they like me. Technically, I am a CompTIA partner, but even the CompTIA partnership doesn't require you to have a particular NDA in place either. It's a pretty open and pretty welcoming partnership contract. And the reason I got the partnership is so I could offer you discounted vouchers. So I talk with them all the time. So there you go. They're very nice people. And I've worked with them forever. Even when I was not a formal CompTIA partner, I did presentations at their partner events. So it's just a conversation. They just keep an open door and a conversation's going back and forth. There's nothing weird or unusual. It's not a corporate behemoth trying to keep the man down kind of thing. Apparently, we'll see. Right now it's not. So it's actually quite nice. It's nice to work with folks. I would not be putting my weight. I say weight. I'm trying to slim down. I would not be putting my efforts behind exams, certifications, and ways to improve your skills in IT if I didn't believe there was valuable things to learn. If this didn't suddenly CompTIA decided, oh, it's all going to be focused on memes and some type of cartoon. Well, okay, I'll find something else to do. But so far, they've done a really good job at focusing on the fundamentals, making you learn those fundamentals in different ways. And we're going to be doing some fun stuff too. Plus, it lets us do these live streams. And yeah, maybe we don't need more memes. Maybe we could use a few less memes. Did I say that out loud? But the real key to me is just finding the things that will get you a job or get you a better job. And if that is the CompTIA certifications, great. If it's another certification somewhere else, and we might add on some other certifications from other places, that would be great too. There's nothing in the CompTIA partnership agreement that would limit or create an exclusivity. I love the AWS certs. I love the Azure certs. I think the cloud certifications are very powerful certs to have in your pocket. I won't say very powerful, but they're kind of overstates what they are. But they are the people hiring for those cloud positions would love for you to be certified in either AWS or Azure for sure, or maybe others. So what have I been playing lately? I just got the new Xbox. So I have just been sort of loading everything back up. I haven't been playing anything lately because we've been working on other things, but have been, hope to get in there tonight. And I don't know, maybe Division 2, maybe Elite Dangerous. I don't know, something else, something on Xbox that could be very relaxing without having to worry. We're getting real close to a start time, aren't we? Let's see if Keynote works. Let's go to this. Green light is good. This is good. This is good. I think we are ready. I've got this ready to go, that ready to go. Hey, top of the hour, everybody. Let's do this. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the June 2021 Professor Messer Network Plus Study Group. This is our N10-007 study group for June of 2021. Thanks for joining us. We've been chatting in the pre-show with the chat room, talking about Network Plus and all of the things that we are going to talk about today. I have questions for you that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and we will step through those and see if we can learn something about Network Plus in this next hour. In the hour after that, I will turn this boat around where I will open up phone lines and take questions from the chat room, and you'll ask me the questions as we go through this. If you are watching this live, you can participate by popping open a new browser window and visiting this URL, professormesser.com/QA. That's where you need to be. That is the question and answer. You just visit that one page, stay on that page. You don't have to move, and I'll just put up new questions as we go. If you would like to use your mobile app, and who wouldn't, go to your favorite app store, look for the Socrative student app, and you can, of course, load up an app on your mobile device. This is the Socrative student app. There's also a Socrative teacher app. That's the one for me. You want the one for you, the Socrative student app. It will ask you for a room name if you use the app. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. If you are watching this on a replay, none of those things will work for you. This is only available if you're watching live, which is why it's important to watch live. You can always find out when the next live event will be by visiting our calendar, professormesser.com/calendar. Now, if you've done all of those things correctly, there will be a question waiting for you, and that question asks, a network engineer would like to query their routers and switches to obtain performance information. Which of the following would be the best way to accomplish this? It sounds like one we did last month. Well, it is. It's our rewind question to see if our Q&A is working. Make sure that you can get into the Q&A. The possible answers are SNMP, syslog, SMTP, SIM, or SAS. So if you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. Put it right there on the screen. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We will figure this out, and we will come right back to this question in just a moment. Thank you for being here on the live stream. We're not able to have a very good live stream without your participation, so we appreciate you being here. And it's always nice to chat with you in the chat room and see what's going on with your Network Plus studies and the other things that you happen to be working on. Don't forget that we have videos all the time coming out. Make sure you are subscribed to our channel, professormesser.com/YouTube. We'll take you over to the YouTube channel. We also have a weekly pop quiz question for Network Plus. You can get that pop quiz question on Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter, or professormesser.com/Instagram if you like pretty pictures with your questions. We will today be looking at questions that come directly from the N10-007, which came out in March the 1st of 2018. This means we're probably due for a new version. We'll talk about that in just a moment, since a number of you have looked into this. The single exam that you would need to take is 90 minutes long, a maximum of 90 questions. You might get fewer than 90 questions. And the scale on this exam is between 100 and 900, and you have to score a 720. So that is where you need to be. professormesser.com/objectives. If you could see it there it is, will allow you to get your hands on those objectives so you know exactly what you'll be working towards. This exam is a combination of multiple choice-based questions and performance-based questions, and we'll talk about both of those types today. So for those of you in the chat room asking about what's happening with Network Plus, there's probably going to be a new version of Network Plus. CompTIA has previously mentioned that the release date is probably going to be September of 2021. That's a good tentative date to work towards. Now, as we sit here in June, that's July, August, that's at least 3 months away. If you started studying right now for your N10-007, you'd be done before the N10-008 was even out. So keep studying. If you're just starting the study process, keep working on the N10-007. That's the one you want to use. We expect the N10-007 will probably retire. We've heard a number of different things. Normally, we count 6 months after the release of a new version. So it would be around the March timeframe of 2022. Although we have heard that they could be pushing it out a bit. The word on the street, the rumors are actually to retire it in June 15th of 2022, exactly 1 year from today. So this is one where if you are working on the N10-007, keep working on it. Don't worry about any new versions. Don't worry about what may or may not happen in the future. Keep doing what you're doing. It's much more valuable for you to have that certification in your pocket than for you to ever wait on a new set of questions, because that's all this is just a new set of questions to be released. Don't do that. Get your Network Plus certification. Get it as soon as you can. Let's also talk about the N10-007 technologies and the products available. Of course, all of our free videos are on our website and on YouTube. There's no registration. There's no paywall. There's no ongoing monthly payments. There's no thing you get hooked into and suddenly you get a monthly payment. None of that. You can watch every video for free, every minute of every training video, and the replays of these study groups, all on my website. Some people like to have a downloadable version of these. I have that available if you'd like to purchase those. If you'd like to set a set of notes to go with this, we'll talk about the course notes in just a bit. Maybe my exam hacks ebook, maybe exclusive Q&A access for this study group. You can get that from my Success Bundle. Visit professormesser.com/netsuccess for more details. I mentioned that we have a replay immediately available after this that you can watch. It's all on YouTube. It's all done automatically. There's also a podcast audio-only version available. You can add to your podcast listening program. You can find the links to that or just some streaming links if you'd like to play it in your browser at professormesser.com/podcast. You'll also find links there for my A+ and my Security Plus study groups as well. Don't forget that about a day later, my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching this replay, everybody say hi to Lori. Lori is listening to this and making a note of all of the timestamps. And for every YouTube video, for all of these study groups, you have timestamps in the YouTube video description. You can go back in time and simply click on those, and it will take you right to that timestamp for the question, the answer, the calls, and everything else. She does an amazing job. It's a great resource. Make sure you take advantage of that. Some of you have probably seen on my website, I have a chat that's at the bottom of the site. It's still there, at least for a little bit longer. I'd like to get everybody running on Discord. I think that's a pretty popular chat platform, and it might allow us to do some other fun things. If you're already on Discord, you might want to join up. Go to professormesser.com/Discord. There's also an icon at the top right of the Professor Messer website where all those social media icons are. You can click on the Discord icon take you over to Discord. And I'm in there, of course. So if you want to chat with me or anybody else that may be on Discord who may be studying for these certifications, it's a great place to go to do that as well. We'd love to have you join us. Let's talk about that question we talked about, which was a network engineer would like to query their routers and switches to obtain performance information. Which of the following would be the best way to accomplish this? Would it be SNMP, syslog, SMTP, SIM, or SAS? It's got to be one of those crazy acronyms / words / whatever that is. Let's see how you did with this question. We'll show the results, and you can see 71% of you say it's SNMP. 17% of you, now 18, say syslog, and then single digits for everything else, for SIM, for SMTP, and for SAS. Well, for those of you that answered A, SNMP, you were probably here last week, or you're just really smart because you knew that the Simple Network Management Protocol is a great way to query switches, routers, firewalls, servers, and other devices on your network to be able to gather performance statistics and operational data. It's very, very useful. There's a number of different versions of SNMP that you can use to do this. SNMP version 1 is the one we originally used. These days, you're probably using SNMP version 3 because that's the SNMP version that supports encryption. And who doesn't want to have encryption for this? Encryption is incredibly useful and incredibly important to have on your network. So absolutely, version 3 is probably what you're running. SNMP information contains a lot of usually sensitive information. So make sure that you keep that access very tight so nobody else has access to the SNMP piece of it. I would say that, yes, this is a very popular protocol used by utilities that you would run on a management workstation in your network operations center, your security operations center, in some cases from your desktop. It just depends. So you've got plenty of options available. S&P was the right answer. 71% of you chose A. You were spot on. Really didn't fool anyone with that one, or you're very good at remembering this. If you're running S&P, you can even gather this over time. Here's a graph that I created from S&P statistics, or I got it from somewhere, but it was created with S&P statistics, showing information back and forth on that device. So there you go. That is your answer. If you answered A, S&P, got it absolutely correct. Let's do some brand new questions now. We're through the preliminaries, the introductions, the announcements, and now finally, we've come to our first new question of the month. This is our performance-based question. As I mentioned earlier, on the exam, you can often get many multiple choice-based questions like the ones we just did. You can choose between A, B, C, D, and E. But the first handful of questions on your exam will not be multiple choice. Oh, no. They will be anything but multiple choice questions. It will be fill in the blank. It might be a matching question. It might be putting you at a command prompt and asking you to perform a function. It could be putting things in order from highest to lowest or fastest to slowest. You never know exactly what the question will be, but the topics on that question will come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. So this is just another way of asking questions on the exam. So nothing to worry about, nothing that you should be concerned about. If you know the objectives, you're going to do fine. So let's do one. Let's do a performance-based question. The first new question of every month is a performance-based question. And if you'd like to participate, you go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in this answer. The question is, categorize the following protocols as secure or insecure. And we have 6 protocols here. We have HTTP, Telnet, IP, TLS, SNMP v3, and IPsec. This is as much a listening exercise as it is anything else, isn't it? So categorize the following protocols as secure or insecure. We have HTTP, Telnet, IP, TLS, SNMP v3, and IPsec. If you think you know the answer, visit professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We're going to figure this out. Figure out where these happen to be. It'd be easy to do. If you're looking for us on Discord, go to professormesser.com/Discord. If you are you can also click that icon at the top of the Professor Messer website. It's an easy way to do it. If you ever look for me on any social media, it's professormesser.com/ the name of that social media. So Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, what else? We've got some others. Twitter. They're there. You can find us. Some and Discord. Another good example for those. So you'll figure out what it happens to be as we go through this. See if you happen to know what this particular exam question, though, brings to you. You can figure out these details as we go through all of this. I think this is one where if you're ever in a position where you're trying to figure out what's next, these performance-based questions can take you to that next level because they ask them in such interesting ways. Some of the questions are not like this where you're really filling in the blank. Some of them are questions that are drag and drop. Some of them ask you to put information into a configuration. They can be pretty involved, but most of them are relatively straightforward. So that helps too. See if you can answer. A number of you have already answered this one. You've plugged these in. So let's see how you did. Let's categorize these following protocols as secure or insecure. There was an interesting pattern this month, but it was just a random pattern that came out. So I just left it to have it there. So let's step through each one of these. Let's start with HTTP. Is HTTP secure or insecure? Well, HTTPS would be the secure version of that. So HTTP is insecure. It is not secure. It is in the clear. You can see everything going back and forth over the network if you are using HTTP. That's why if you ever visit the Professor Messer website, everything on the website is HTTPS. Doesn't matter what page you go to. I think most sites are that way these days. If not, they should be. The next on our list is Telnet. Telnet is an insecure protocol. That is a terminal communications protocol. Normally these days we'd use SSH because SSH is secure shell. That's why it's SSH. Telnet is insecure. If you were to Telnet, I'd be able to see your username, your password, and anything else you typed in at that command prompt if I was capturing packets going across the network, and we don't want that. Next on our list is IP. Is IP secure, insecure? I guess it depends which version of IP I was talking about. I'm surprised I didn't get a little bit of splits there on the chat room on this one. But generally, IPv4 by itself, and technically IPv6 by itself, is insecure. There's no security built in, although IPv6 has some IPsec capabilities built into the protocol itself. So there's some nice capabilities with that. But by itself, IP is also insecure. Next on our list is TLS. TLS, Transport Layer, wait for it, Security. Has it in the name. So TLS is the update to not really HTTP, but TLS certainly is a security technology we use commonly with HTTP. Next on our list, SNMP v3. Is that a secure or insecure protocol? Well, if you were listening earlier on the very first question, we talked about SNMP v3 being encrypted information. I think that qualifies as secure, and it should qualify that way for you as well. SNMP v3 is secure. And lastly, IPsec, which would allow us to add security to IP. That is where the secure comes in. So there is that odd list of categorizations here, which this is how random.org put them together. So I went with it. HTTP is insecure. Telnet is insecure. IP is insecure. But TLS is secure. SNMP v3 is secure. And IPsec is secure. This is a very good example of the types of questions you could possibly get on a performance-based question on your exam. Some are more difficult. Some are easier. So you may find a mix of different types, but this certainly is the style of question that you might run into. So give you a good example of that. That's your performance-based question of the month. Hopefully you were able to be at least somewhat familiar with these protocols. Most of you did pretty good on this one. If there are some of these you don't recognize, and of course, if you don't know all of the secure protocols, make sure you check out the video 4.5 called Device Hardening, where I go through each one of these protocols and a few extras. So you can, of course, learn what options may be available for secure and unsecure protocols. Is it unsecure or insecure? I think it's the same thing. We're going to go with that. Instead of dwelling on my bad grammar, we're instead going to push ahead and let's do another question. This next question is a multiple choice-based question. We're back to multiple choice, and it asks, a user is logging in with a username, password, and smart card. Which of the following would provide MFA? Would that be an SMS code, a face scan, PIN, employee ID number, or USB token? A user is logging in with a username, password, and smart card. Which of the following would provide MFA? Would it be SMS code, face scan, PIN, employee ID number, or USB token? If you think you know the answer, please, no answers in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA right there at the bottom of the page and lock in your answer. See if you happen to know this one. We're moving ahead, definitely. There is a whole section of security on the Network Plus exam. Everybody is responsible for security, whether you're networking or servers or databases or email or anything else in IT. So certainly you should be familiar with this technology. I think that's the only real hint I can give you. I want to see how well you lock this one in. A number of you are working on this one right now. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. See how we do with this when you're working with MFA. What is that? Is that an association? Is it, should I be contributing to the MFA? Do they do that Labor Day telethon? I think that's the MFA, isn't it? They don't do that anymore, do they? There is no more Labor Day telethon. We just contribute online now and do the best we can. I guess that's how it works. Let's see how you did with this one. A user is logging in with a username, password, and smart card. Which of the following would provide MFA? Would that be an SMS code, a face scan, a PIN, an employee ID number, or a USB token. And how did you do with this one? Oh, we're not quite sure. 32% say SMS code, 30% say face scan, 13% said PIN, 9% said employee ID number, and then 16% said a USB token. So we really were not quite sure which direction to go with this one. So let's see how we do. Let's break this down and see what's really being asked on the question. This question said we're logging in with a username, a password, and a smart card. So we've already got a number of authentication factors that we are using. Certainly a password would be something we know. A smart card would be something we have. So the real question is, how can we add additional or multiple factors of authentication along with this? We want something else with authentication associated with this. So let's see which one of these would be different than what we are already using, because we need a different type of authentication factor to be able to do this. So let's see how we did with this one. We'll start with an SMS code. An SMS code is something that we have. That's a text message. So we have our phone, we get a message on our phone, and what's clear about this one is if you're working through these problems is that we already have something we have. A smart card is something we have, and the phone is something we have. Therefore, an SMS code doesn't provide any additional type of authentication factor. We already have something we have. Why don't we just gather everything we have and bring it with us? We only need one of these to prove it's us. Smart card is the thing that we have. There's no need to also include a phone as to something we have. That adds no additional factor at all. So that doesn't work for me. What about a personal identification number? A PIN. That's what a PIN stands for, is personal identification number. We use that as an authentication factor when we go to an ATM and get money out of an ATM. We use our personal identification number. We're logging into something over the phone. We often use a personal identification number. So as you're working through these, you will find personal identification number. That's something you know. That's something that's in your head. Nobody else can find a PIN. It's in your brain. So the way that we would break through this one and understand something we know is PIN, but we already used a password. A password is also something we know. So it would not be, there's not a multiple factor we would get from that. We're already using something we know. Why would we use another something that we know? So that's the real problem, is working through that particular issue. So it's not a PIN either. An employee ID number, well, that's certainly not anything that is private. That would not work very well for multi-factor authentication. Employee ID numbers, generally speaking, are something that is open and available, or even best case, something that we make available to identify ourselves. It's an identification factor and not an authentication factor. So that's another good example of something that would not work as authentication, because an employee ID number doesn't authenticate anything. Most of the time, it's even something that's well known in public. And USB token, a USB token is something that we would plug into a machine to allow us access. Usually it has a certificate on it so that it can prove it really came from our USB token. Well, that's something we have. Well, we already have a smart card. We already have an SMS code. We already have our phone. Why do we need to bring yet another thing to the table? We don't. We need something different. That leaves the only thing that would be different is a face scan. Face scan is something that we are. It is a biometric. I could have said fingerprint. I could have said your gait, the way that you walk, is a type of a biometric, something that you are, although we sort of break this one out a little bit differently in figuring out the details. But face scan is the only option here that is an authentication factor and is different than one that we are already using. Now, some folks in the chat room were saying, that's a trick question. It's pretty straightforward, especially if you're familiar with your authentication factors. Even better, it's not unlike a question that you could possibly get on the exam. So there's a reason I give you these questions, is to prep you for that day when you're sitting in the exam room. This style of question is certainly you should be familiar with. So thank you in the chat room. Folks are saying, no, that's not a trick question. That is pretty spot on. If you understand multi-factor authentication, I've often said, if you don't know the content, everything's a trick question. So that's how I look at exams. Boy, this exam's tricky. That question was tricky. Well, you can't read. So that's probably where that came from. In the chat room, the abstract with your $5 donation. Thank you so much. You put into the note here. Thanks again for all you do for us wanting to learn this stuff. I have a docking station setup question. Save it for the after show. I'd love to hear what the docking station setup question is. We did docking stations, I think, last month on the A+, and I used some new graphics, threw some folks off. But getting those are very useful. But please bring that up in the after show. I'll be glad to address that. And thank you so much for the donation as well. That means that face scan is the right answer. 32% of you said face scan. You got it absolutely right. 30% said SMS code, not the right answer. None of these were anything new for authentication. The only thing that would work would be B, face scan. Face. It's something you are. I mentioned I could have just used a fingerprint. You'll often see this for biometrics where someone's using a fingerprint to do this. And it's pretty useful because nobody else has your fingerprint. As long as everything's working the way you would expect, that's a pretty good biometric. These days, we use face scans a lot on our mobile devices. So that's certainly what we would work through. Make sure you're familiar with that. I use face scan all the time on my phone, on my tablet. It's an easy way to authenticate. That is hopefully what we need to know about multi-factor authentication. If you're not familiar with multi-factor authentication, make sure you visit the video section 4.2, aptly named multi-factor authentication. So there you go. That is the correct answer. It's the only answer that you could have chosen on this one that would have answered this particular question. Hopefully that can help you too as you go through these. Let's do another question, shall we? Let's get past the security and let's get back to some networking, shall we? This next question asks, an Ethernet cable has become disconnected from a 110 block patch panel. Which of the following would repair this issue? Would it be a multimeter, an inductive probe, a punch-down tool, a loopback plug, or a crimper? An Ethernet cable has become disconnected from a 110 block patch panel. Which of the following would repair this issue? Would it be a multimeter, an inductive probe, a punch-down tool, a loopback plug, or a crimper? If you think you know the answer, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Please no hints in the chat room. Please no comments in the chat room. We're going to figure out if this on our, well, we can comment in the chat room, but no hints in the chat room and no answers in the chat room. We'll work through that too if you're ever trying to figure out the details of these. But this is where you would lock it in. That link at the bottom of your screen, ProfessorMesser.com/QA, is where you want to go. That will allow you to lock it in. And we'll see how you do. I can't wait to see that. I know it does kind of sound like an A+ question, but it is also, obviously, a Network Plus question as well. There are a number of questions that are the same across all three A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. So at least you've got some options there to work through if you're ever figuring this out. Now, this is a trick question. Thank you, Jason. I've been called out in the chat room with my trick question. This is one actually I've run into. I've had to fix this before. I happen to be the one who disconnected it to have that. Are we sure we can't use a hammer? Not one of the answers, but I'm not ruling it out. So there we go. We'll figure out if it's going to work or not. Have I used a hammer before? I won't tell you what I've used before. I'll tell you later. After we do the answer, I'll tell you how sometimes you don't have the right tools available. You use whatever you got. And it wasn't a hammer, but there are things that you can do just to get through. Duct tape, WD-40, sure, I'm in. I think sometimes that helps. Let's see how you did with this one. An Ethernet cable has become disconnected from a 110 block panel, a 110 block patch panel. Which of the following would repair this issue? Is it a multimeter, an inductive probe, a punch-down tool, a loopback plug, or a crimper? And our results say that 78% of you say, I would use a punch-down tool for that. 11% said, no, I would use a crimper. That's good. And then single digits for loopback plug, inductive probe, and multimeter. Well, if you're like me and you're tripping over wires all the time, especially the wires that are in a 110 block, this is the block of wires that is just a mess of wires that you see here. To figure it out is sometimes difficult. To put it back into the block, we need to punch it into the block. And to do that, we need a punch down tool to be able to do that. This is the punch down tool, very common. I have one in the back, not the same model, but close to that. So you can put the wire right in front of it and it puts it in there and punches it, kind of bangs it right in. In a way, it's its own percussion instrument. It is a bit of a hammer because there is something that really gets driven into the block when you do that. Allows it to, without having to take any insulation off, it breaks the insulation and puts it into a connector that's in the block, which actually goes very, very quickly. And at the same time, if there's any of the wire left over, it trims the wire. Very often, if you look underneath the 110 block panel that's on a wall somewhere in your facility, you'll see on the floor just tons of little wires because for some reason, people that do this don't clean up their messes. I'm looking at you, Jerry. I don't know who Jerry is. Just made that up. But this is something, it's a skill that's very useful. It seems like there's some weirdness going on that's very difficult to figure out. It's actually relatively straightforward, and it becomes very easy to do once you do it a few times. Ultimately, if you look at the block from on top, this is not a 66 block. That's a 110 block there. So you can see somebody's put the wires in. Can I even zoom up on it? Let's zoom up. Oh, that's really good. So you could put the wires in. They get pushed down and squished, technical term, between these two contacts. These two contacts are cutting into the insulation. So they are making a connection, and that's how we're able to get the connection in. And then it cuts off the wire here at the top to keep everything neat and clean. Very, very useful tool, a very important tool to have if you have punch down tools, punch down blocks that you need to work with. Very, very useful to be able to do that. That means that a punch down tool is indeed the right answer. If you answered C, the 78% of you got that one absolutely right. 10% of you said crimper, and a crimper would be great if it was an RJ45 connector that had come off, and I've broken plenty of those as well. So it becomes very useful to know how to separate out the wires, put the new connector on, and then to put that RJ45 on, you have to crimp it. Just a fancy pair of pliers that crimps that connector to the wire. Relatively inexpensive, relatively easy to do, which is probably why we chose that format, so that anybody would be able to do it and get their network up and running. You've also got 6% of you that said loopback plug. Very useful tool to have if you're trying to verify that a physical interface is working properly. Any of the data coming out of the interface is looped back into the interface. So it's this tiny little connector that you would plug into an interface. That is not used to replace cables that are on a 110 block. So that's not going to help you. An inductive probe is useful if you have a toner device on one end of the cable and use the probe to find the other end of the cable. It's a locator. It's a fox and a hound, as some people might call it. But that inductive probe is not used to reconnect wires to a 110 block. And then a multimeter, which is great to look at AC/DC voltages, to look at any type of continuity or look for continuity. It doesn't help you put wires back on a patch panel unless maybe that sharp connector, you just kind of punch it into. I don't think that would work very well with the multimeter, but you use everything you can. If that's all you got, and I mentioned earlier, sometimes you have to put a wire back into the block. It looks like this. How are you going to make that happen? Well, you put the wire on top of the block. You think, I don't have a punch down tool, but look, that's just big enough to fit my very small screwdriver into, and you just kind of push the screwdriver in there really hard, and you hope that it makes a good connection and gets you through until you can get your hands on a good block, punch down tool for the block. So that's sometimes that helps. So maybe not a hammer, but anything would work sometimes. Find the perfect screwdriver. Not what you should do always. You really do need a good punch down tool because they really put those wires in there. But if that's all you got, that's all you got. 79% of you got this one right. Punch down tool is the right answer. Congratulations. Well done. with that one. Well, you can already tell in this Network Plus exam, these questions are all over the place. We've done multi-factor authentication. We've done some security. We've done some wiring. We've talked about protocols and encryption and all of these other pieces. If you ever get into looking at all of the details, it is extensive. There are tons of videos. In my single course for Network Plus, 101 videos, over 12 hours of content you would want to watch to learn everything. But sometimes you just don't have enough time. You don't have enough time to watch all the videos and take notes and see everything going by for all 101 of these. So I've created for you a set of course notes. These course notes bring everything from the exam, everything from my videos, and put them in one single, easy-to-read place. These are the PDF version of my course notes. There are also physical versions of these course notes available. And you can see I'm going to go through this relatively quickly just so you can get a feel for all of the detail that's in here. Port numbers, OSI model, different networking types, all of the different images, the graphics, and the charts that I have in my videos, they are in my course notes. This is an incredibly useful tool to speed up your studies or to use as a study guide after you've gone through the books, you've gone through the videos, and you just need something to remind you of these topics. That's what the Course Notes book was really designed to do. You can find out more information about that at professormesser.com/NPCN Network Plus Course Notes. And it's also a great way to support the website. Thank you so much for the purchasing and the support that you have for not only the Network Plus, but the other courses as well. We really do appreciate it. Let's do another. I'm with you in the chat room. Let's do another question. I agree. Here's the next question that asks, a network administrator has been asked to install an OS on a cloud-based system. Which of the following would best describe this cloud model? Would it be SaaS, DaaS, IaaS, or PaaS? IaaS just doesn't sound good. Just doesn't say it. There's nothing you can say there. Maybe we'll try to do that. A network administrator has been asked to install an OS on a cloud-based system. Which of the following would best describe this cloud model? Is it SaaS, DaaS, IaaS, and PaaS? That was easy. Why haven't we done that before? That makes perfect sense. Those of you listening to the podcast are wondering what in the world is going on right now. The options are SaaS, DaaS, IaaS, and PaaS. So hopefully you're familiar with this. Now, if you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. I'll just say it over and over and over again. Hopefully you're familiar with the cloud-based question. Somebody in the chat room was talking earlier about that sounds like an A+ question. Well, this sounds like an A+ question and a Security Plus question and a CISA Plus question. And it's the same question from all of these exams. Hopefully it's one you're familiar with when we start stepping through these. But you will see these on Security Plus. You will see this on A+. I could have just pulled this right out of those exams as well. Think of it as you are now studying ahead. You already know what the next thing is going to be. So that makes it easy to have that there. Hopefully that's something that you're familiar with. Oh, Cloud Plus, yes. So that would help us. That's another one. So you're already ready for these certifications. We're just prepping you for all of those as they're coming through. Whenever I work through at least the certification exam content, I do see that some information is overlapped a little bit, but there's not a lot of that. There's not a lot of overlap between these exams. So this is one of those examples, though, that absolutely fits into that middle area of the Venn diagram where those two are coming together. Let's see how well you did with this one. The question asked, a network administrator has been asked to install an OS on a cloud-based system. Which of the following would best describe this cloud model? Is it SaaS, DaaS, IaaS, or PaaS? What would it be? What would it be? If we show the results, you can see that 49% of you say infrastructure as a service. That's what the IaaS is. We have software as a service, SaaS. That is 25% of you. 20% said platform as a service is the right answer. And then 7% said desktop as a service. That's what the DAAS is for. Well, if you are the one who is installing an operating system, you're installing the software, you're managing the operating system, you're managing everything associated with the system and the way that it runs, and all you're really doing is buying time on a piece of hardware, then you are using infrastructure as a service, or IaaS. Sometimes you'll hear this referred to as hardware as a service. You're effectively buying the equipment. And in fact, if you're on ProfessorMesser.com right now, that is my cloud, or a number of these are cloud-based services. The web servers that are running there, those cloud-based services are running infrastructure as a service. So I buy time on the hardware, and then I put my own operating system. I manage my own operating system. I put my own applications on those servers. I manage all of that. Actually, I have a third party manage it so that I can do this with you. But this is a good example of infrastructure as a service, a hosting provider, for example. I'm still responsible for everything else on that system and making sure that it all works. For example, if you were getting a website like I have, web server providers often provide those as infrastructure as a service. And that is a very common cloud service to find. Now, we had about 50% of you say infrastructure as a service, so well done with that. We have these other services as well. 24% said software as a service. Software as a service is one where you don't have to install an operating system. You don't have to install or manage the application. You don't have to write the application. You simply log in, and it's right there. So another one of those very good examples of knowing what it happens to be when you connect to those systems. If you use Google Mail, you use Yahoo Mail, use Hotmail, use Outlook in the cloud, you're simply logging in and suddenly you've got email there. You didn't program that email system. You didn't install the email system. You don't have to manage the email system. You just log it in and you're there. That is software as a service. Does not apply in this case because we're installing our own operating system and ostensibly our own applications on top of that. We have platform as a service. If you're a developer, there's many cloud-based offerings out there that provide you with building blocks. So you don't have to start programming from scratch. They give you modules that you can stick together like Legos and create your own application that is commonly referred to as platform as a service. And then lastly, desktop as a service. DAAS is very vague. You could certainly say that is also database as a service because those offerings are out there. But if you are working on A+ or Security+, it might even be in the Network Plus as well in the cloud-based section. Desktop as a service is a very common cloud service where you are using the desktops in the cloud. I know that on the A+ exam, I give some good examples of that. So that is one that clearly, if you were studying for only Network Plus, you would have not recognized that at all. So desktop as a service or anything else with DAS, it's okay, whatever you choose, not the right answer in any case. The only one that is the right answer is indeed C, infrastructure as a service, 51%. So in the chat room, yes, if you're running thin clients and those thin clients are connecting to a desktop service that is running on some other system, I show examples of this and demonstrate this in my A+ course. Yes, that is desktop as a service. Using VDI, it's not the same thing. Desktop as a service is you are buying time. Most cases that desktop as a service is one where you are buying time on a service provider because it's as a service. VDI, it would be if you were using it internally. Think of it that way. So this case, very clearly infrastructure as a service is the only one that fits. That's the one you would choose. That is the right answer. If you want to know more about this particular question, you can visit the video, section 1.7, Cloud Services and Delivery Models. Let's do another question. I've got more here. The next question on our list. This question asks, a network administrator needs to connect devices between buildings located 4 kilometers from each other. Which of the following standards would be the best choice? Would it be 1000 base SX, 1000 base T, 1000 base LX, 10G base T, or 100 base TX. So this is one where we would really want to break these down. Those are the 5 Ethernet standards we need to be familiar with in this question. The question again asked, a network administrator needs to connect devices between buildings located 4 kilometers from each other. Which of the following standards would be the best choice? Would it be 1000 base SX, 1000 base T, 1000 base LX, 10G base T, or 100 base TX? All of these real Ethernet standards. Those are all real things. Those are all from the CompTIA exam objectives for Network Plus. So if you don't recognize any of those, you need to write those down because you need to go back and see if you can go through what those happen to be. We need to understand those standards. Make sure you're familiar with those Ethernet standards. It's going to help you. So write them down, make a note, see what they happen to be. So that's the only hint I can really give you is all 5 of those answers are real. That doesn't help very much because you can't get rid of any of them. Of course, if one of them wasn't real, I probably wouldn't have said that to begin with. So I think that's where you would focus, is feeling good with that. Remember, no hints in the chat room, no answers in the chat room. Please, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. These standards are important. Very often you will be asked to work on designing a new network connection or a new system or part of a project. You're wondering, how are we going to connect those sites together? We've got a distance of 4 kilometers. How are we going to make that happen? So you do have to know these standards. You get familiar with them after a while. You start doing them over and over and over to be able to know what they happen to be. Hopefully this is one you know as well. Let's see how you did with this one. A network administrator needs to connect devices between buildings located 4 kilometers from each other. Which of the following standards would be the best choice? Is it 1000 base SX, 1000 base T, 1000 base LX, 10G base T, or 1000 base TX? Well, let's see how you did. Let's show the results. And 52%. We were shooting for half. We got that on the third answer, C, 1000 base LX. We got 18% 10G base T, 16% said 1000 base SX, 10% said 1000 base T. Very strong on all of these answers. And then lastly, 6% say 100 base TX. So now let's break this out and see how we do and really understand why maybe C would be the right answer, 1000 base LX. Now, if you answer 1000 base SX, which was answer A, 15% chose that one. That is gigabit Ethernet, because that's what the 1000 for, 1000 megabits is that way, be able to work through them. So the SX is using gigabit Ethernet using near-infrared light. So this is very often an LED to be able to work through. That's what we use, infrared, like the infrared LED that's in a remote control. This usually runs over multi-mode fiber from 220 meters to 500 meters, depending on the type of multi-mode fiber you happen to be using. That's why we often refer to 1000 base SX as the short haul to be able to get traffic done, because it's only going to go 500 meters, maybe inside of a building, for example. You want to connect equipment that's in the same data center. You probably would use something like that to connect it using gigabit Ethernet. If you need to go longer distances, you need long haul or 1000 base LX. This is often using laser beams to work. It will, over multi-mode fiber, extend to 550 meters. But if you run single mode fiber, you can go all the way to 5 kilometers. So that's what that is for. This is where, if you ever work through troubleshooting, connecting, getting all of those different sites running, this is important standards to know. You'll probably run into 1000 base SX and LX in a data center right now. Very, very easy. So the S for short, the L for long. Very often, both of these over fiber, but they are different types of fibers you can use for each of these standards. Make sure you refer to the 802.3 standards for exactly what type of fiber would apply and the distances associated with those. So that at least can get you that far. That means if you did choose 1000 base LX, the 52% of you got that one absolutely right. And if you chose 1000 base SX, 16% of you not as correct. Not as correct at all. You would not go, you go 500 of those meters and then it wouldn't go the rest of the way. So that's not going to happen either. Now, what about these other standards? For example, we've got 1000 base T. That's 1,000, just like the other thousands. Wouldn't that work? Except 1000 base T is 1000 baseband over twisted pair. And that twisted pair connection, according to the 802.3 standard, goes a maximum of 100 meters before it is no longer supported. So we need to go 4 kilometers, not 100 meters. So 4,000 meters versus 100 meters is very different. 1000 base T will simply not make that distance work. 10G base T, same problem. It's 10 gigabit instead of 1000 megabit or 1 gigabit. It's 10 of those gigabit. And that even has, in some cases, a shorter distance depending on the twisted pair you're using. But some twisted pair can go up to 100 meters as well. It has the same distance limitations as answer B, 1000 base T. And lastly, 100 base TX also has a 100 meter distance limitation using twisted pair. 100 base TX is not going to make it 4 kilometers. The only standard here that can make it to that distance is answer C, 1000 base 1000 base LX. Get the right answer in here. That is the one. So that is exactly where it would go. 100 meters is easily supported using 1000. I see folks all the time saying, it'll never make it to 100 meters. It makes it just fine. In fact, it goes much farther than 100 meters in practical use. But 100 meters is what is supported and specified by the standard. If you go outside of that 100 meters, you are outside the specifications of the standards. There's no guarantee that any of it will work. But 100 meters works great. That's why it's a standard. I don't know why you didn't see it ping that far in practice, but it works fantastic. So hopefully that will help you. Now, why is it some of this T? Why is it TX? Because that's what they decided to put on it. These do not mean anything specifically. They are not an abbreviation for something. They are not an acronym. They're just letters they put onto the end of the standard. Because if you go back and look at 100 base TX, there's also 100 base T is a completely separate standard than 100 base TX. And there's all kinds of 100 base standards to be able to look at that. It's just a set of letters they put there so they can designate what that particular standard name happens to be. Doesn't help at all, does it? The X is not for crossover. The X does not mean anything. The T does not technically mean anything either. They put a T, I think, to specify twisted pair, but it's not, doesn't really mean twisted pair. It just means T. Just means that's the letter they used for the standard. X is not crossover. It's not what that means at all. So don't think that it does. The whole mess with crossover and not crossover and when do you use it, does it work right, what standards are that, those are pretty important, and they're part of the Network Plus exam objectives. Make sure you're familiar with that. T stands for T. That's correct, Bobby. Thank you. That is exactly what it stands for. T does stand for T. I'm glad we were able to straighten that one out. It came after the S. Maybe it did. Who knows? We never know with these. The piece of it. TX does not mean twisted crossover. Nope. Sorry. Doesn't. All this time. That's one I had not heard before up to today, is people thought the TX meant crossover. No, it doesn't mean crossover at all. It is a type of standard. There is a 100 base T standard that ran 100 megabit over 2 pair. Am I doing that right? 100 base T, maybe it's the other that I'm thinking of. We'll pull up our 802.3 standards in the after show. We'll look at all the details because there's even more than that in the 100 base T standards. And it can get confusing, as you can clearly see. Let's do another question. Speaking of confusing, doesn't mean transmit receive either. Nope, it doesn't mean anything. T means T. T does not mean X. Which of the following would best describe a differential backup? I think some of you are just messing with me at this point. Which of the following would best describe a differential backup? Is it all files changed since the last full backup? Is it all files stored on a partition? That should be all. All files stored on a partition? Is it all files changed since the previous day? Is it all files changed since the last snapshot? Or is it all files associated with a specific application? Which of the following would best describe a differential backup? Is it all files changed since the last full backup? All files stored on a partition? All files changed since the previous day? All files changed since the last snapshot? Or all files associated with a specific application? Let's see how we do. If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Please no nothing that would lead us down the road in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to the link that's on your on the screen, professormesser.com/QA. Be able to get exactly where you need to go to answer this question about which of the following would best describe a differential backup. I'm trying to fit it all on the screen here. It's very difficult. Let's see if we can, that's about as best that I can do. You can kind of see that one. The answer, yes, 100 base TX. No, that's not one of the options. That's not one that's there. We'll figure out the details of this. Which of the following would best describe a differential backup? If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, then you want to go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link. Click that. And in that Contact Us link, put your name, your email address, and in the title or the subject line of that form, please put this is the June 2021 Network Plus Study Group. Also, if you, in the body of the message, this is probably the more important part, put the super secret code word of the month, differential backup. And then you can, of course, put anything else you would like in that message. Just put that differential backup on a line all by itself so I can see it really, really easily whenever you're working through there. Differential backup, yes, different when you want to get out of the swamp. And trust me, I know about getting out of the swamp here in Florida. The differential backup along with your differential winch will get you out of the swamp. Did I say Network Plus? I thought I said Network Plus. June 2021, right? Are we in the right place? Network Plus. Put whatever this is, put it in the subject line. Because most of the time you know better than I do anyway. We'll figure out the details for this. So let's see how you did. That, by the way, if you do all of that and you send me that message in about a week, maybe less, maybe more, I will send you an email that is digitally signed that says you attended this, and you can use that for a continuing education unit credit, specifically a 1-hour webinar category, continuing education unit credit. Let's see how we did with this question. Which of the following would best describe a differential backup? Is it all files changed since the last full backup? Is it all files stored on a partition? Is it all files changed since the previous day? Is it all files changed since the last snapshot? Or is it all files associated with a specific application? 66% of you said all files changed since the last backup. We have 13% that said all files changed since the previous day, and 13% said all files changed since the last snapshot. A two-way tie for second, and effectively a tie for third between all files stored on a partition and all files associated with a specific application. So you've got another number of options. Let's look at a differential backup and see how this works. So let's start with a differential backup that we're starting a differential backup process, and we start with Monday. We back up everything. This is not a differential backup. This is a full backup. When you back up everything, that's why we call it a full backup. It's fully backed up. We backed up everything on this one. Then a day goes by. And of course, after a day goes by, people have been updating their spreadsheets. They've been updating documents. They've been changing graphics files. They've been adding new files to their home folder. They're putting all kinds of new things there. Well, we don't need to back up everything again. We just need to back up what's different. A differential backup. So we're going to back up a little bit of the information that has been created in that last day. Then another day goes by. People add a few more files. They make a few more updates, but we're not going to just back up the updates. We're going to back up everything since the last full backup on Wednesday. Then another day goes by. On Thursday, more people are working. Seems like they'd be working more than this. I'm not seeing a lot of new work being done. Maybe it's a slow week. Maybe it's a holiday week. But anyway, on Thursday, we also do another backup, and we back up everything since the last full backup. So if you look at this, the Thursday backup happens to contain everything that was in the Wednesday backup. The Thursday backup also contains everything that was in the Tuesday backup, because we're backing all of it up, everything that's different since the last full backup. That is a differential backup. That means if we need to restore this on Friday. Suddenly, Thursday night, everything crashes. We lose multiple drives. We have to rebuild everything. Well, that's okay. We have backups. So what do we need to restore this? We, of course, need the full backup that's there that we made on Monday, but we need everything that was done since Monday. Well, guess what? We did a great differential backup on Thursday that contains everything that was changed since Monday. So we add that to the mix. We put those two together. Both of those now create a complete backup and bring us back up to where we need to be. That is a differential backup. That is everything that was changed since the last full backup. If you answered A, that's 67% of you got that one absolutely right. That is all files changed since the last full backup. Now, all files stored in a partition, that's not a differential backup type. That's just all the files that are on a partition. In fact, that's more of a full backup if you were to just do that every day. That doesn't make sense at all. All files changed since the previous day. Well, in my example, that's actually true. But you might be doing backups every hour. You might be doing backups every week, depending on how important those backups are to you, how important that data happens to be, how important data happens to change, how often data happens to change. So my example was every day, but that does not define a differential backup. That is certainly not the best description of an incremental backup to be able to do that. All files changed since the last snapshot. Well, we're not talking about cloud here. We're not talking about a virtual machine where you can take that snapshot and capture everything that's changed since a particular point in time. That's not a differential backup. That's more of a snapshot. That's what we call those backups, or snapshot backups. And then we've got all files associated with a specific application. Only 4% chose that. A differential backup has nothing to do with application. It knows nothing of applications. That would not be the right answer. I go through both differential and incremental backups in my video, section 3.2, backup and recovery. You're welcome to check that out to get more details about both of those, understand when the archive bits are cleared and why we're doing the backups and how they work. Very useful information and important information because it's part of your exam objectives. Now, I know we're past the top of the hour, but let's do one more. We've got a question in the queue we can go to, so let's do this question in the queue. And this question asks, which of the following provides a standard format for transferring log information between systems? Is that SSH, syslog, SCADA, SNMP, or SIM? Which of the following provides a standard format for transferring log information between systems? Is it SSH, syslog, SCADA, SNMP, or SIM? A lot of S's. Why do you do that? Well, that was intentional. It's one of those. If you think you know what it is, please know answers in the chat room. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. See what you think it happens to be. This is a very specific question. This is it's a trick question is what this is. If there ever was one, this is not a trick question. Read through the question, understand what the question is asking of you, look through the possible answers, get rid of any answers you know can't possibly be associated with this particular question, and then pick the right answer from what's remaining. That's the process you should go through with every single question on these exams. See what you happen to work through. Maybe some of this looks familiar. Maybe you know what it is. Maybe you understand what these differences are. Maybe you know all of these. All of these are from the Network Plus exam objectives. Some of these are in other exams as well. Some of these are not. So make sure you're familiar with that. Whenever I start breaking through these and trying to figure it out, it helps me if I can understand what it is and what it isn't. That may be the thing that really helps. So hopefully you'll know this too. Please, again, no hints in the chat room. I appreciate that. Figure out those details. Get this all working. Let's see how you did with this one. Which of the following provides a standard format for transferring log information between systems? Is it SSH, syslog, SCADA, SNMP, SIM? Showing the results, 50%, half of you say syslog. Only 19% said SIM, which I'm surprised at. 16% said SNMP, which is close, I think. We have 10% of you that said SSH and only 6% said SCADA. So what would it be? A standard format for transferring log information. And that's the real key, is how do you transfer log information? As you can imagine, we have many different systems that have logs. We have firewalls, we have switches, we have routers, we have servers, we have workstations. All these devices have logs on them. And all those logs are very different. They're all made by different manufacturers. They're all configured to have different functionality. Whenever I go through and look at the log details of the system, they are very different. So we need something that can easily transfer these logs across the network in a standard way. Even though it was a product from a third-party company, I need to do this in a standard way. And so there is a standard protocol that can be used to do this called syslog. Syslog is usually something you will see already configured on the server, the switch, the router. It even tell you, I have some logs, and you're configuring the log section. You want me to send this to a device using syslog? Give me the IP address or give me the name. I'll send it over there, and being able to work through it. So maybe that's something you can use. This uses a lot of hard drive space, a lot of storage space to be able to do this. Because imagine getting a log from every router, from every switch, from every server, constantly, all day, every day. It really creates a lot of content. Now, where do you put all of these files? Usually you put them in a SIM, the Security Information and Event Manager, and that gets the data, the syslog data being sent. It could just be stored in a file. So that's another way to do it. But syslog is the standard protocol that really works with almost any device out there that supports syslog. It all talks to each other. It's very useful to use. Syslog is the right answer. If you answered B, 51% of you got that one absolutely right. As we've already mentioned, it wouldn't be SIM. SIM is where we would send the data into that Security Information and Event Manager. We would send it to that device using the standard protocol of syslog. See how all that works together? So that's why it would not be SIM. The standard format to transfer log information is syslog. And in fact, the syslog data, as I mentioned, doesn't even necessarily have to go to a SIM. It could go to something else as well. But usually it's going to a SIM. 15% of you said SNMP, the Simple Network Management Protocol. We talked about SNMP earlier as a way to gather performance metrics from a device, to check on configuration settings, to see how many bytes or errors may have gone through a particular interface. SNMP is for operational data. It's not for log files. SNMP very rarely, if ever, is transferring log file information. Instead, it's really transferring real-time or near real-time performance metrics. So SNMP would not be used as a standard format for transferring log information, which was what this question asked for. The supervisor control and data acquisition, SCADA, that is a standard for communicating with industrial equipment. So that's a very standard format or standard set of protocols you would use for large manufacturing sites, for energy providers that have all the energy equipment. They have all of those automated and very large industrial equipment, and they use a standard format to be able to communicate between each other called SCADA. And then we have SSH, Secure Shell. We mentioned SSH earlier as a way to securely send terminal information from point A to point B. So this particular case, we're sending log information, not terminal screen information. So SSH would not apply here. That is not the standard format for transferring log information. The only one on this list that really fits, the one that fits certainly the best, is B syslog. That is the right answer. And if you chose B syslog, you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Well, we have gone over time a little bit, but I hope that's okay with everybody. We went through all of these questions that came directly from the Network Plus exam objectives. Make sure you get your hands on these objectives. They are incredibly valuable to have. If you've never seen them, you should work right now. Go to professormesser.com/objectives, click on the link that takes you over to CompTIA, fill out their form, and get the objectives. This is it's a secret weapon if you've never used it before with your exams. It tells you everything you need to know before you walk in the door of the exam room. So very useful to have. It's a great checklist to use before you plan to schedule your exam. It's how you know you're ready to take the exam. Find that at professormesser.com/objectives. Objectives. We'll get you there. We do one of these study groups every month, actually multiples every month, but we do a Network Plus every month. Our next Network Plus study group is on July the 14th. We're back to our Wednesday, hopefully. That's where I've set it now. I thought it was going to be Wednesday this week. For those of you that commonly visit, we do these on Wednesdays. This is being recorded on a Tuesday. We're doing this live stream on Tuesday because my schedule got messed up the rest of the week. So unfortunately, I had to push it back. But the instant I make a change, I make that change in my calendar. So make sure that you are either synced up with my Google Calendar or that you're constantly checking in at professormesser.com/calendar. I have the Google Calendar link under that link as well so that you can add it to your existing, you know exactly when it will be. And when I move it, it will move on your calendar as well. Hopefully that works out to see. For those of you taking your exam on Wednesday, David, I did it just for you. My David, you're so good. Now you're covered. Maybe they'll ask all about syslog, the fiber standards. They'll ask you about secure protocols. You'll be set. That's how it will work to figure out those details. We'd love to have you back on July. Of course, next week, we do a Security Plus study group. And the first week of July, the first full week on the 6th and 8th is A Plus and Security Plus on the 21st. So we're always doing something. So you'll figure it out. You'll know where we go. Well, it's been an hour, but we got an after show coming. So show up for the after show. Don't forget about my success bundle, professormesser.com/netsuccess. We've also got, by the way, I don't think I had a list of the vouchers. We now have discounted vouchers on the Professor Messer website. Do not pay full price to take your Network Plus exam. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers. You don't need a voucher code. You don't have to juggle different coupons. None of that. It's just already discounted right there on the page. And you get my Exam Hacks ebook for free if you buy the voucher from my site. You get something bonus, something that's actually going to help you on your exam along with that voucher. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers. And it's another great way to support the site as well. You're going to have a voucher anyway. Why not get one very inexpensively with the discounts already built in and get the Exam Hacks ebook? What a deal. Don't forget about our YouTube links, our Twitter links, our Instagram links, our LinkedIn links, our Facebook links. Type in professormesser.com/ the name of that site, and you'll be able to find me on /YouTube, /Twitter, /Instagram, /LinkedIn, /Discord for the new Discord. I've got some really fun things we're doing on Discord very shortly. So make sure you join that community as well. We'd love to have you there. Stick around for the after show. I'm going to open up the phone lines. You can ask me questions instead of me just asking you questions the whole time. We'll take questions from the chat room. We'll open up the phone lines. It'll be great. Thanks for being here. We will see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. Well, that is a lot. It seemed like shorter than an hour, but yet here we are. So that's just the way it works sometimes. If you will bear with me a moment, I will get our phone lines up and running, and then I'll talk to you about how you can either ask me questions from the chat room, or you can certainly call in for questions as well. I don't have the phone lines up. Please bear with me. I have to click things on my side because we don't have a staff here. There's nobody here but me. Lori helps, but she's not here, so she doesn't do the phone lines. We're waiting on her. She's waiting for us to finish so she can do those all-important timestamps in the video. So now I can call in. If you'll bear with me a moment, I will click a few things on my side and call into my own show because it's hosted in the cloud. It's a cloud-based service. It's software as a service in the best possible way. Let's see how we do. Dun, dun, dun. And then I type a few things on my side that you can't hear because I've turned off the potentiometer.
Enter your 6-digit PIN.
All right, I will do that. And if I do that correctly, we're going to see if I do that correctly. The nice lady. Welcome, nice lady.
Welcome, Professor Messer.
Well, that's great. How nice of you. That means that you can also join us over telephone lines. This is communication by telephone, by voice. Voice communication, not with that button. That takes us back. It's all over. Who knew it? Nope, we're back. This is the phone line. If you're inside the continental United States, you can call our toll-free number, 855-785-7545. If you are elsewhere, anywhere in the continental U.S., it's 855-785-RJ45. We also have a way for you to call in from outside of the continental United States for free because it's a toll-free number. You can use Skype, and no Skype minutes are required to call a free number. You just put a +1 at the beginning inside of Skype, +1 855-785-7545, and you can call in that way as well. Also take questions from the chat room. So we'll have a look at the questions coming through and figuring out those details. As some of you mentioned, what is a telephone is a method of communication using voice communication, sort of like email, messages sent electronically. That's email. But that's a great way. We'd love to have you call in. People are calling in the phone lines. Thank you so much for figuring out those details, getting on there and holding on to that. I appreciate you doing that. How do you get the continuing education credit for CompTIA? I gave those instructions near the end of that first hour, and you follow those instructions and you wait for me to send you an email. Sometimes it goes pretty quick. Sometimes I'm doing it the next day, although I think the ones I have in there now have been sitting there a week. So probably at the end of today, I'm going to have to go through those and get those back to you. So if you get them in now, you might get that email as quickly as today. Maybe. I hope. Sort of. We'll find out anyway if we step through those and figure out the specifics of that. Let's go to the phone lines. We will start with the 240 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Professor Messer. My name is Oliver. I'm calling from Maryland.
Hey, Oliver from Maryland. You've called before. Thanks for calling.
Yes, I have. I just also want to let you know that I passed my 1002 early this morning.
Nice. Congratulations. That's got to feel good. Now, is that the second one? Did you start with the 1001? Are you now A+ certified?
Yeah. I am not A+ certified. I just took the 1002 this morning.
That is fantastic news. Congratulations. How's that feel?
It felt really great. You know, I've been working on it for the last, I would say, 5 or 6 months. And, you know, it finally feels good to now, you know, call myself A+ certified.
Now, if you did it this morning, did you take it online? Did you go to a testing center? How did that work?
Yeah, so I took it at a local testing center. My area, my specific area isn't that bad with COVID. So I managed to get a testing center not too far away from my house. And honestly, I didn't really, you know, I wasn't really caught off guard with any of the questions. You know, your kinds of exams went all right. And actually, a future employer would offer me the job just because I have my A+. So once my current job ends in the contract, I'll be ready to start this new job.
Okay, so there was a little bit of high stakes going on with this one. We really did need to get that A+ under our belt, didn't we?
Yeah, and I might go for my Network Plus yet. In terms of which certification I'm gonna go for next, it's kind of hazy right now. But I just have a couple questions about the Network Plus. Would you say it was like more difficult or challenging compared to the A+ in terms of the material length? Is the Network Plus bigger in terms of the material compared to even the A+ combined?
Well, I would say if you are already familiar with the A+, obviously the Network Plus is very different content. It's very different in its scope. It's not obviously the same exam objectives. In fact, there's not a ton of overlap between the two, as I mentioned earlier in the study group. But I would say the difficulty level of Network Plus of the actual exam is probably about the same difficulty level as the 1001 or the 1002. It's not complex. The questions have the same style and the same format, and the exams look and feel the same. And the way the questions are asked, I don't find to be any more or less difficult than the way the questions are asked for the 1001 or 1002, or for that matter, even Security Plus. Although Security Plus does have a few more additional, perhaps more complex topics, I would say the difficulty level for most people taking those is very similar to the A+ and Network Plus.
Okay, that's interesting because I was just wondering in terms of like quantity, like because I know the 1001 and 1002, they're very, like the A plus in general is very broad, so they'd have to divide it into exams.
Right.
Would you say that would be like the network plus, but instead this one's combined in terms of the quantity of what's inside the exam?
Let me see if I can find the exact A plus objectives. Here it is. So the 1000, let's just look at the 1001 because that's the one I just happen to have in front of me right now. The number of topics, the number of actual individual objectives on the 220-1001 is 565. There's quite a, like you say, it's a very broad exam. There's a lot of different things you have to know. You have to know all those port numbers. Each port number is a new objective. That's the way I list them out here. The N10-007, I already know how many objectives that has 499. So it actually has fewer objectives than the 1001 has. Now, I would not say that that's an exact apples to apples comparison, but it's pretty close. It's maybe apples to a pomegranate. It's pretty close comparison between those two. The problem you're going to run into is Network Plus. It's a little denser in its scope. There's a lot. For example, a question we did today was about Ethernet standards. There were 5 standards listed there, and you really needed to know the nuances between all 5 of those standards. There's not a ton of rote memorization things on the Network Plus exam, but that one certainly does tend to lend itself towards rote memorization. But that's one of the few examples of that. You still need to know port numbers. You already know a lot of port numbers from the 1001. There's a lot of networking acronyms, maybe more acronyms on the Network Plus than any of the A Plus or the Security Plus, perhaps even combined. We love acronyms in networking, so there's tons of acronyms to go through. But I would not say that memorizing that or answering the questions on the exam is much harder. And in some cases, the scope of Network Plus, as we've just seen, is a little bit smaller than the scope of the individual A plus exams.
Okay. That kind of gives me a more general idea on what to expect from Network Plus. My last... Go ahead.
I was going to say that the Network Plus is... Even if you're trying to figure out, do I do the Network Plus? Do I not do the Network Plus? It's a valuable certification. Knowing networking helps you in almost every aspect of IT. So if you're on the trying to figure out where to go next, what to do next, obviously if somebody's going to hire you, they'll probably tell you what they would like you to go into next. But getting any type of networking knowledge is really going to help you regardless of what you do in your career.
Right. And also, like, I feel a little bit more confident in terms of taking the Network Plus because I do have my CCENT. It's like the step below the CCNA, but
yep.
The CCENT did expire. But in terms of familiarity, I feel like transition would be a lot easier. In terms of like the acronyms, like you said before, some concepts that maybe I can remember from my CCENT back when I took it. But yeah, so I feel like I will be going for the Network Plus next. And my second question is, would a remote IT support help desk position give enough like practical experience in the IT field? Because I know there are like pros and cons with working remote and on-site. But can you elaborate between having your first help desk job and what to provide a great experience even if you're remote?
Well, you may find it, and I know you're sort of splitting the differences between someone working a remote help desk versus somebody who's working on a non-remote help desk. But the really only difference is where you happen to be sitting, because for many of us that have worked on a help desk scenario, even a corporate help desk, you're not always in the same city as the people you're supporting. You're not even often in the same building as sometimes you are. I worked a corporate help desk at an insurance company where I could get up from my desk, I could walk to the 3rd floor and go to that person's desk and help them if I needed to. But there's, in many cases, they're nowhere near you anyway. You would never be able to get up to walk to their desk because it's not even an option. So whether you take the calls in the comfort of your home or you take the calls in the discomfort of a call center, Doesn't matter. You're still doing exactly the same job, getting exactly the same knowledge, getting the same hands-on, the same on-the-job training as you get anywhere else. And you handle and have to troubleshoot exactly the same problems, whether you are working from home or working in a call center with a bunch of other technicians. The only difference you have in a call center or in an office where you're working with other people is when you get stuck in a problem, you can put somebody on mute and then go around the corner and go, "Hey, Bill, you ever seen this before? Here's a weird thing. What do you think of that?" And then you can sort of collaborate with people because they're right there. But there are also ways to collaborate online. You might have everybody who's working and there's a chat up, there's a Discord, there's something you're using internally to be able to track that. And you can throw it in there. "Hey, has anybody seen this one before? This one was crazy. I've got this person on the line. What do you think?" And get real-time backup on those chats from them. So either way, the goal, though, if you're trying to figure out, do I take a job that is work from home or do I take a job that's in a call center versus not taking the job, the answer is always take the job. Always get your foot in the door. Always, always, always get that job, because the hard part's getting in the door. The easy part is then learning and leveling up and moving up the ranks. That's relatively easy once you're there, but you got to get there. So if you're trying to figure out what to do or where to go with this, get in, get a seat, whether it's working at home or working in a call center, and start learning, start getting that experience that you can put on a resume.
Right. Yeah, I was just like narrowing down my options at this point, whether I prefer like a on-site with because I'm like college, I kind of do prefer working, in person. But I was just wondering what your opinion was. And yeah, I think I might actually go for remote because at the same time, like you mentioned before, collaboration with other people has gotten better ever since the pandemic started. And I noticed that you mentioned like corporate help desk. Would you rather be in a help desk environment of like a large company, like a corporate or enterprise, or like a smaller company? I'd say I guess around like 5,000, probably even like 1,000 person company.
I've worked in different companies of different sizes and different scopes. Some companies had 1,000 people or 2,000. I've worked at other companies that were large multi-billion-dollar companies out of Silicon Valley, not as help desk, but as an employee of those companies. So I've worked at large and small, and I've worked at small mom and pop value-added resellers there were 12 of us, there were 15 of us. There are advantages and disadvantages to all of these, but I found most of the time near the end of my career, this last half of my career was almost exclusively with the either large independent or large publicly held companies. I worked with Network Associates, which was McAfee and Network Associates merged together. Worked with Palo Alto Networks. Worked with these very large, multi-billion-dollar companies, and almost always I enjoyed the large companies probably the most because you're working with other people that have the same interests as you. There's large number of benefits. There are financial advantages to working in these large companies from a salary perspective. There's ways to move up in the organization or ways to move into different directions if you run into a wall. Lots of different things to do. So I like the big companies, probably most of all. Are they big companies sometimes? Yeah, they are. Do they make some bad decisions sometimes? They do, but that's just a big company. The goal is to understand and be able to work within the scope of what that company is providing. I learned a lot coming through the ranks, and I think the one thing that helped me the most is somebody who told me early on, your job is to make your boss happy. Now, I know there's a lot of other things on your job description, and of course, doing those things on your job description make your boss happy. But if everything you're doing is making your boss happy, you're going to have a good annual review. Perhaps your salary will go up each year. And if you ever move to another company, you'll be able to get a good recommendation. Just have to do what they would like you to do. Sometimes we look at these big companies and think, why are we doing this? This is so wasteful. There's a much more efficient way to do it. Doesn't matter. Make your boss happy. And if you do that, everything's fine. If you get to a point where you're just not happy making your boss happy, then you probably need to be the boss and you need to go open up your own company And then you get to decide all the crazy rules, and you're the one who's in charge. There's always another option.
Right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to answer my questions. I'll let other callers call in and ask their questions, but I appreciate you taking the time, and you have a wonderful rest of your week.
Congratulations again on your A+. Thanks for calling. Well, hopefully we'll talk to you again.
Thank you.
This is one of the things that I think is a challenge. There's always going to be politics in an organization. I don't mean political party politics. I mean internal company politics. The real key is knowing how to act and react and work with the politics that are in place. You're never going to get rid of them. You're not going to change them. So stop trying to get rid of them and stop trying to change them. Instead, work with them and find ways to work well with those. I think you'll do fine for this. Before I go back to the calls, and thank you for holding callers, in the chat room, number of questions about, since we just talked about Network Plus, and that particular caller also had his CCENT, which is the Cisco Certified Entry-Level Network Administrator certification. It's was the precursor to the CCNA, no longer exists, but a valuable certification on its own. So you have a manager, you're studying for Network Plus and for CCNA, which is great. They want you to get some hands-on. And since you're studying for the CCNA, if you don't have Cisco equipment in a lab somewhere to work with, I would, and this is really for anybody, highly recommend use Packet Tracer from Cisco. It's free. It emulates a switch and router environment, even in stations. You can put them on a screen, connect them together just by dragging and dropping Ethernet cables between them. Click a button and you're booting up into Cisco's iOS, and you can configure switches, you can configure routers, you can set routing protocols, you could do static routing, you could do switching, you could turn on spanning tree, you can set up trunks, you can set up VLANs. It's as if you have this equipment in front of you and you're at a command line that looks exactly like a real piece of equipment. You could, of course, go to eBay and buy a CCNA pack for $250, $350, and they ship you a bunch of boxes of switches and routers, and you can put that together and do exactly the same thing with physical equipment. Absolutely. But it's so fast doing it online. You drag and drop, and you're connecting devices online. Packet Tracer from Cisco is what you want to run. They have versions of it that run on Windows and Linux and Mac OS. It's a very, very comprehensive and very powerful application. And it's a great way to learn networking. So a little bit beyond the scope of Network Plus, but certainly fits into your CCNA studies. And if you do that, you can easily go through and do this. Although you do have to have a username and password, as they're mentioning in the chat room, to get Packet Tracer. You just need to open an account. You don't have to have taken a Cisco course anymore. They opened it up. So you can easily create your own account. I've never taken a Cisco course that I can remember. And I've got an account and can log in and download the latest one. It's a fantastic application. Very useful to have that there. Also in the chat room, we'll come back to the phone calls in a moment. How different is the study material from the 501 to the 601? Dramatically different. Remarkably different, as if they are different certifications. Do not use 501 materials to study for the 601. Do not use 601 materials to study from the 501. You'll be sorry. Don't do that. Make sure that the exam materials you're using match the version of the exam that you're planning to take. Very important. Back to the phone calls. Oh, we lost somebody. I'm so sorry. Probably had to hang up. I had you on hold for so long. But Kyle hung on just a little bit longer. Thanks for holding.
How you doing? My name is Kyle, and I'm calling from Round Lake, Illinois.
We appreciate your call, Kyle. Thanks for calling in. What can we do for you?
I had a networking question. I'm certified A+ and Net Plus technician.
Excellent.
And I just ran into a debacle. I just want to build some background. The current devices that I'm using consist of a modem that I bought. I think it's an Aris modem.
Sure.
I'm using Xfinity Wi-Fi or through the cable service provider, and I'm using a Netgear XR, I think 500 gaming router. And within the last 3 months, I've been getting DDoS attacks as I'm looking through the logs of the router, and I want to know what is the best way to combat somebody who is continuously DDoSing and giving denial of service, kicking me off my network.
From a home perspective, it's very difficult. This is a problem that gamers have all the time because gamers are just, some gamers are malicious. They are evil, horrible in the way that they go after their competitors outside the scope of the game, and denial of service is just an awful way to do that. And by the way, illegal. It's in the best possible scenario, it's a felony. So this is not something anyone should be doing with this equipment. The problem is at home, you have very limited mitigation options for denial of service. The devices we're using at home are not designed to really block these very well. There's limited logic within some of these even more advanced routers to be able to understand when a distributed denial of service attack is occurring, and then being able to stop it is the problem. But your service provider has many tools available to stop a denial of service attack. In fact, they can probably go into their configurations, just add it to the blocking function for distributed denial of service, and may be able to remove those from the link coming down to you. That's probably the most effective way to do this. Because it's from devices you're hosting and it's coming to your home, you have limited functionality, limited capabilities to be able to do that. So I would say if you're someone who is suffering from this, or somebody's trying to take advantage because they've somehow gotten your IP address and now they are just pummeling your local network, go to your provider and say, turn these guys off, get rid of this. And they probably have a way to do that from their side. To do this at home, you would need some specialized equipment, a specialized firewall to really do it well. The ones that you would get from a consumer perspective just aren't designed to stop this. They don't think that that's something they have to worry too much about. So my recommendation would be to go to your provider. That's kind of I know that takes you back to Xfinity, which has its own challenges, but I think that's probably the best place to stop it.
Thank you. I just wanted to add on to that initial question. Is there anything that I can buy, like you said, would it be commercial products, like commercial firewall or some IDS or IPS that I can purchase to kind of, practice on this? Because I want to go for my Security Plus, and I think it's a good time to, combat things like this.
There are technologies out there that you can get. If you were an enterprise, you can get equipment that is specifically designed to fight denial of service and other types of attacks. A specialized piece of hardware goes in the rack. You connect the internet to it. You connect yourself to that box, and then it becomes kind of a fancy firewall to be able to do this. But it's really a denial of service blocking device. There's many ways that you can mitigate denial of service, different techniques that you can use to allow or disallow traffic coming in. Some of it very surgical. Some of it is just about numbers. Allow everybody in until you hit a certain point, and then just start randomly throwing out sessions, randomly disconnecting people so that you can free up resources. You might be disconnecting the attacker, or you might be disconnecting real people. But random early disconnect is random early discard is a very common way to do that. The challenge you have at home, though, is not a lot of options. Sometimes you can find someone who has a firewall that has a few more advanced denial of service functions in it. So if you were to bring up, what are some of the ones? I was just looking at one the other day that looked pretty good, that came with its own hardware that was a little more advanced. pfSense might be an option. I don't know what DOS options are in pfSense, but that would be one to look at. I was also looking at, let me bring up my browser on my phone because that's where I do all of my heavy lifting. Untangle is another one I was looking at. I'm not certain of the denial of service capabilities on Untangle, but there are a number of third parties making hardware, or maybe they make the hardware. And it's all a built-in, self-contained device, but it's got more power, more flexibility, more configuration options than something that you would get from off the shelf at Best Buy. So there might be some options here. There might not be. I might just be saying, look and see if it is, and not really, because I'm not really sure saying that off the top of my head, but maybe that is something that can help you too. And that may be worth the purchase to bring in a more powerful firewall that has additional denial of service functionality in there. And of course, the question is, will that denial of service functionality actually stop the type of denial of service that you're receiving? You'd have to do more research to really figure that out.
Thank you for your wisdom, Professor. I appreciate it.
That's really annoying. I hate that's happening. Best of luck getting rid of it.
Thank you.
Appreciate the call. That's one I don't want to be in that situation either. You know, we've talked earlier in the pre-show. I've talked about I've gotten a little bit of Xbox time in because I got the new Xbox. I've been playing a few games now and then. I don't have a lot of time to do that, but if I catch an hour, I can get online, kind of get immersed a little bit. And that's the real concern I have, is I don't want the whole thing to fall apart. I get up, finally get that hour, you get online, you sit down, and then suddenly you're not able to do anything because somebody is attacking your system. That's just annoying. So I sympathize with what you're going through. So hopefully you can figure that piece of it out. So let's go to the next caller, then we'll come back to the chat room. There's a few more questions that have popped up in the chat room here and there. We'll go to the 423 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Daniel. I'm calling from Georgia.
Hey, Daniel.
I called last week after I passed my Core 1 exam for the A+, and then today I passed my Core 2.
Wow, that was a quick turnaround.
Yeah, so my score wasn't as good for the Core 2, but it was passing, and thankfully I listened to your advice about focusing on the troubleshooting sections.
The real part is if the passing score is 700 and you get a 700, that's not a low score. That means you studied exactly the right amount of time.
Yeah, that's true. So I got a 740 for the second one.
Oh, that's actually pretty good. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. So I'm taking a week off from studying. I'm planning to go to Network Plus. And
wow. Okay.
The week off. Yeah. So I'm going to take that week to probably apply for a lot of help desk positions.
Yep.
I'm not sure what a realistic amount is, but if I have the time, I'm thinking I can set a certain amount a day, like 10 a day. And update like cover letters for each one of those and stuff. So my question is, I got a couple, but I wrote them down so it wouldn't stall. But for my Network Plus, would it be helpful to set up a home lab? And if so, what projects would be useful for doing on, like, when it comes to studying for Network Plus?
Well, first, congratulations on the A+. That's remarkable. You were able to turn around and get that second exam done so quickly. So most people it takes months. So I wouldn't be too concerned about the score because you did a great job at passing that exam. So a pass is a pass, and nobody cares what the score is as long as you got the passing score is the important part. As far as hands-on or labbing for Network Plus, you know, everything that you can do in a lab to help solidify the topics that are on the Network Plus, I think can help. But there's got to be a limitation to that. You know, we don't commonly have T1 lines that we can put up between sites and look at T1 configurations of CSU DSUs. That's a little bit beyond the scope of the Network Plus. And in fact, I mentioned earlier about Packet Tracer being such a valuable emulation tool. You can build these networks, tear them down, reconfigure them in a matter of seconds, and it's incredibly powerful in what it does. It is also a little bit outside the scope of Network Plus because you have to know how to configure a switch, how to configure the router, how to connect them all together, and the nuances, the minutia of that is not really important for the Network Plus. Network Plus does not go that deep into setting up a network. But if you've already set one up, you really understand the topics of Network Plus much better. So that's your balancing act, is do you spend time doing those pieces or not? I think if you really want to do some good labs for Network Plus, it should be focused on the things that are in the exam objectives. So there are tons of networking command line things you need to know how to use. You need to know how to use ping and trace route and understand the output from these things, not just when you would use them, but what you're looking at on the screen when you see that output. You would use path ping, another one that puts a lot of stuff on the screen. What am I looking at? What did this really tell me about the network? And a lot of the other tools that you would find on Network Plus, there were some great tools for looking at configurations of service providers, setting up configurations for troubleshooting. Those are good labs to do and step through that would help you directly with Network Plus exam objectives. I don't think it's entirely necessary you know how to build an IPsec tunnel between two routers and send traffic across those to be able to pass your Network Plus exam. But will it help you understand what IPsec really is and what it's doing? It probably would help you a little bit more. So that's where I think these additional labs that kind of go beyond the scope of the certification might still help with certification topics. But if I had to, you're talking about focusing on exactly what you need to know to pass the exam, all of those command lines that are in there are probably a great place to go. And really understanding, most of the rest of the exam is really understanding what's in the protocol. So maybe getting some stick time with Wireshark would be incredibly valuable. It's remarkable what you can learn from just an hour of sitting down with Wireshark, capturing your own traffic and looking through it. You'll be surprised just how much information you see going across your network, and you'll be surprised about things you find that you had no idea was going on over your network. That's another great place to go. So those would get you started. Go to the command line, go to Wireshark, and then from there, sky's the limit.
Okay. Yeah. So the A plus, in order to pass it, I did study the all-in-one book for 4 months minus a couple weeks here and there, and then some of that time was also your videos and the practice exams that you had and the course notes. So, but yeah, I did take them really close together. So when I apply for jobs for help desk, would it be worth applying for? I mean, I'm going to apply for in-person and remote. There's pros and cons to both, but if I'm planning to move up into like a networking position or eventually a cybersecurity position, would it be best to be in person so that I can job shadow somebody, or,
I think there's probably advantages and disadvantages to both. I think for most of us that are in positions where we're doing help desk, most of the time we're in our desk, we got our headphones on, we're talking to somebody on the phone, we're focusing on the remote desktop anyway. So for doing that at home or doing in the office, as we just mentioned on that earlier call, not a huge number of differences there. But you bring up a really good point of being in a facility that has people in it, is that if you're in, I did this too, if you're interested in networking, go hang out with the networking team. Go find out what they're doing. One of the first things that really got me into networking is I was working as a desktop administrator. We were rolling out a new Windows implementation. I spent a lot of time understanding the details of the operating system, understanding the registry, really getting a familiarity with what I needed to do to make Windows really work well in our environment. And I'm walking down the hallway, and all the networking folks were all huddled around this box that was making some weird Geiger counter sort of noises. And I said, what are you guys doing? What is that? What's happening? They go, oh, this is a sniffer. It takes packets from our network and shows us the data that's inside this wire right here. And that just, to me, that was it. That was a watershed moment for me where I said, well, I could see what's on the wire. Can I see this? They're like, yeah. They were so excited. They got one of the very first ones ever made. And they plugged in, they showed it to me. They go, here's the packets going back and forth. Here's what's happening on this user's machine. Here's the data coming back the other way. We can see the size. We can see the timestamps. That was it. I was done. I'm like, I need to know about this. How can I learn more about this? And they're like, oh, well, you're interested in networking? Come with us. And they sort of took me under their wing and said, we're setting up a new network over this weekend. Come in on Saturday. We're going to load stuff in racks. We need warm bodies. We need people with muscles to put these in the rack and hold it while we screw it in. We're going to be pulling cables. It was grunt work, effectively. They needed warm bodies for grunt work, and I was all in because it gave me a chance to know them, understand what they were doing, see the type of person they were looking for. I got to ask them, if I want to do this, what do I need to learn? What do I need to know so that I can qualify to do this? They're like, oh, well, you need to know this, you need to know this, you need to know this. And so I already got with them, and they figured out that, yes, that's where I need to go. And the next job I got in that same company was moving into the network team and doing things with the network infrastructure. So for me, that was pretty important. Understanding the packets and being able to break through and understanding the details of those was really quite important. And knowing the people, it's hard to do that when you're working at home. Do you do it over Zoom? Some people like to have their cameras on. Some people don't. Is it just over chat? You can't get a relationship going there. You can't go to lunch. The best you could do is hope that there's going to be some type of event. But if everybody's working from home, they're not going to build out a new networking infrastructure. It's more about making sure the VPN software and hardware is working properly, and that's really about it. So I think there's the advantages and disadvantages are pretty clear. You could end up working for a very large company that's located in a different state because you're at home, but you're not going to have some of those advantages of being in a building with the other smart people and learning from them and figuring out where to go next with your career. So I love the idea of working from home. I work from home now. I think it's great. But I don't get a chance to interact with those people. So that's your disadvantage when you're trying to figure out which way to go.
Okay. So two more questions. What kind of industry, when it comes to help desk are there any industries that are better than others when it comes to wanting to move up into networking, or eventually what I really want to do is cybersecurity?
Well, if you're trying to get into a help desk and cybersecurity is really where you want to go, you might want to try finding an organization that has a security operations center where you could effectively work as a help desk with the security people. That's the best possible combination. Now you're already effectively working in cybersecurity. Granted, you are a help desk. You are doing the basics of this. You're not really doing the security part yet, but you are monitoring, learning the nomenclature. You're understanding the processes. You're looking at the software. You're getting a familiarity with what happens for these events. You're talking with the other highly skilled cybersecurity professionals who already work there, and you're learning from them. That's a great scenario. One step down from that would be a network operations center, or a NOC. That's a great place to be. Kind of a similar job. You're looking at a screen, you're waiting for something to turn red, and you're calling somebody if it does. You're not really the one fixing the problem yet, but you're learning networking, you're working with the software, you're understanding more about the technologies, and you're working with people who already know these things, and hopefully you're learning from them. As far as other industries, it's interesting because I used to work with a next generation firewall company. I would visit everything from federal government, state and local government, very large corporations, medical, transportation, manufacturing, electrical, just across the board. I have been on the floor of beer manufacturers. I have been back in the back of NASA. I have been inside very large financial centers. The one thing is that everybody's rack with all of the networking equipment works exactly the same in every single one of those scenarios. There are nuances into the type of traffic and how they're using the network. Obviously, a medical network has a different scope and approach than a manufacturing network, which is very different than a trading floor or a financial network. They all have different requirements and different priorities, but the underlying foundational technology they're using is identical. The Ethernet frame is the same in a hospital as it is when somebody's trying to launch a rocket. It's really the key is knowing how to build the networks in a way that work best for those specific vertical markets, if you will, and really work through those. It doesn't matter where you get the job in the help desk. You were going to be moving. I think I started my career at a computer reseller, for lack of a better, really wouldn't call it a value-added reseller, but it was a computer reseller. I moved into financial services at an insurance company, went from there to effectively working as a systems engineer for a software developer company. They made the sniffer software. I liked it so much I went to work there, and then moved from there into cybersecurity, went to work for the next generation firewall company because it was a common next level up from there. You're already looking at all the traffic going across the network, already had a familiarity with security technologies from working at the McAfee side of things that made perfect sense to roll into next generation firewalls. So I ended up doing nothing relating to what I started with. I started at finance and ended up as systems engineering. But the technology was the same in both of those. It was the same packets. It was the same network. It was the same understanding, just approached in a different way. Don't worry so much about what vertical you're in. You're not going to stay there the rest of your career. It'd be unlikely you would stay in that vertical the rest of your career, although maybe you do. But you have that option to really move wherever you want. That's one of the beauties of information technology.
Okay. Well, I've got one last question, but I do want to say that I have a connection in a hospital in the IT department, and he's the owner of a jiu-jitsu gym I go to.
Great.
And I've been in contact with the hiring manager. And I've been emailing her a couple of times the past few months. She's the one that got me into studying for the A+ because I wasn't qualified for the position I applied for. So I'm hoping that goes well soon. I'm going to apply for a bunch of other jobs anyway, just in case.
Good.
My question is, when I get into help desk, I know there's a huge time frame, like a big range of time that you can say, but if I were to work as hard as I can and get my Network Plus and then Security Plus, what's a good time frame that I can either get promoted into another tier help desk or into a networking position? Or
I would think most people, when they are in a help desk role, are probably there somewhere between 9 months to a year. At that point, the employer has seen that you either are or are not a good employee, that you come in on time, you work hard, you learn things. And at that point, you should have been able to learn other things outside the scope of what you're doing on the help desk, or learn the help desk things you're doing very well. You're obviously going to be doing a lot of the lower level stuff. You're changing someone's password in Active Directory. Yawn, do another password change. But eventually you're going to run across a problem where you're working with the network team or you're working with the security team. They're going to see how well you work with them. Your bosses are going to see how well you work because, as I mentioned before, these jobs are really people jobs. They're not technical jobs. The best way to move up is to talk and communicate with people in a way that they would want to be talked to and communicated with. So that's the way to do it. Most of the time, I think most people work about 9 months to a year, at which point they are moving to whatever the next thing is going to be or getting ready to move into what that next thing is going to be. A lot of our time frames with moving jobs around have been screwed up over the last year, but I think we're getting back into some level of normalcy, at least in the United States, that we should be able to go 9 months to a year and then move to whatever that next thing happens to be.
Okay. Well, that's all the questions I had for you. Thank you for taking the time to answer it. I'll be back in a couple months after I pass my Network Plus.
Good for you. Congratulations on the A+. Best of luck with the job hunt, and we can't wait to hear what happens next.
All right. Well, thank you.
Appreciate the call. That's always good to know. One of the things that he mentioned on the call, Daniel said, I spoke with the owner of the jiu-jitsu gym who knew the person at the hospital. Who would have thought that was the connection? But indeed, that's how it works. That's exactly how it works. I mentioned in my video how to get a job in IT with no experience, and I think it's already in the video description on YouTube right now. You can scroll through that, and it should be a link to that. If not, Lori will put it in there. Thank you, Lori. That is a video that says you need a formal education, you need certifications, you need some practical experience. And the last one, I always tell people, you need to know somebody who already works there. So you need to know those 4 things. Those are the 4 elements. But knowing someone who works there, even through someone else, is valuable. You don't have to know them or their family or how many kids they have or where they vacation. You just have to know that they know somebody that you know. There's a professional relationship. You're not a stranger off the street. You're not squirrely. Somebody can vouch for you. No, he's going to come into work every day. He's a good guy. He's a hard worker. He gets along with people just fine. He'd be perfect for this job. Okay, let me talk to him. So that's the type of connections that sometimes you don't realize even exist until the point where you finally reach out and say, do you know anybody who could use somebody to help desk? I'm just got my certs or working on my certifications. Just ask everybody. Do you know anybody who's looking for good help desk people? Do you know anybody who works in IT I can call? Oh yeah, my cousin, he works at blah, 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 or my friend does this, or I know somebody who hires at the hospital. That's good stuff right there. That's the way it's supposed to work. So don't think it's just about, let me get the cert, put my resume out, and we're done. You should be working the angles. There's a strategy to this, and you should work every part of the strategy in order to maximize the potential. Don't do anything shortcut, because shortcut doesn't work. Let's go back to the phones. Thanks for holding for so long. 504 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Caller. Are you on mute?
Hi, is this Professor Messer?
It is. Thank you for calling.
All right, thank you so much. I was actually just calling because I'm kind of at like a roadblock with the IT field. I've been in the IT ever since I was a kid, like just messing with computers. Built my own computer sophomore year in high school.
Nice.
And did all that stuff. But I'm kind of at a roadblock. I'm thinking about going back to college to finish up my associate's degree in information technology. But the financial situation, I'm not really sure if that's the best option for me. I don't know if it'd be better to do the A+ certification before even considering that. So what would you do?
I think it's time to start gathering some stats. It's time to start figuring out where we're starting from. And I mentioned this in that same video I just mentioned, how to get a job in IT with no experience. I talk about a strategy for figuring out the playing field, because the playing field where you live is probably very different than the playing field somewhere else. If you live in the DC area, it's a completely different IT market than if you live in Chicago or Dallas or LA. So the first thing I would do is make that spreadsheet of what are the jobs in your area or the jobs people are hiring for in your area that fit kind of the entry-level IT type of jobs. And then just list them out. Maybe there's 3, maybe there's 10, maybe there's 50, but you don't know until you go through the list. So go to Indeed, go to Dice, go to the places you go online to look for jobs, go to LinkedIn jobs, go everywhere you can to start gathering these jobs. Put down the name of the company, put down the title of the job they're hiring for. Are they looking for formal education or are they not? Put that down. What type of formal education are they looking for? Is it a 2-year degree, 4-year degree? Do they care? Are they looking for certifications? What certifications are they looking for? Are they looking for skills that don't require certifications? If so, what are those skills? Let's make a list of those. And then if they have pay or anything else that would be interesting, any additional benefits, it would be nice to put those in that same spreadsheet. And then do that for every job you can find in your area. Okay. And you may find that everybody's asking for a 2-year degree, or everybody's asking for a 4-year degree for the best possible, or maybe nobody's asking for certs, or maybe everybody's asking for certs. And if they are, what certifications are they asking for? You just don't know until you kind of do some of that legwork first to figure out, okay, where should I be focusing my efforts?
I got you. Yeah, because with the financial situation right now, I'm thinking that the A+ certification would be the best for me. And I'm also a person that likes to, self-study. I don't really do well working with others, to be completely honest. When it comes like in a classroom setting, that's not really my thing. I'm more of like just do it yourself kind of person. So I actually had a neighbor who was in network security. So he kind of just told me go the certification route, but I just wanted to see if that's still like, a good idea today, because he did it, years ago, and he's already got his foot in the door at a really good company. He just works from home. So
This is a sort of a problem that we run into because we can't see into the future very well at this point. We don't have a way to know how are things going to be 10 or 20 years down the road. For the most part, people who are trying to get a job in a help desk or an entry-level position, employers want to hire somebody who has the skills to do the job. It's considered to be a sort of that technician's job. Do you know about the operating system? Do you know about the network? Do you know how to configure these settings? Do you know how to reset the password in Active Directory? Are you able to talk on the phone with people? Are you someone who works well with others in the department? Can you at least be a good employee and do the things we need you to do? You don't need a college degree to be able to do that. And I used to work with someone who was incredibly talented on both the technical and the sales side. He had worked himself through the ranks of systems engineering, had worked into being a salesperson, was making more money than I was making. He did not have a 4-year degree, and I did. So it's not always about your potential when it comes to a 4-year degree. Very often has nothing to do with potential, these 2- and 4-year degrees, these formal degrees that you would get. However, he got to a point where he was looking at going into management, and for management, they like to see that you have a 4-year degree, and he felt to some level that maybe that was limiting him moving into that particular role within the organization. Now, it turns out we all went a different direction. We all ended up not moving into management or doing that type of thing. But he still would say, and even he would say, even if it wasn't about getting the management role, sometimes I really wish I had that formal degree because so many people have it. And I feel like I'm having to compete even after going through the amount of success he has had. Isn't that interesting that we're all wanting to be sure we have all the skills that we need and all the recommendations, all the qualifications that are important. And even after his enormous success and his continued success, he still felt maybe that's a regret. Maybe that's one of those things I really should have stuck in there and gotten the 4-year degree. I looked at him and said, "You're crazy because you're doing just fine. You're crushing it. Anybody else would be glad to have the job you have, making the money that you're making. So don't worry so much about your formal degree. You're doing just fine." So we kind of talked each other off the ledge a little bit with that. But we don't know what's coming in the future. We don't know if employers are going to be more interested in the 4-year degree or less. We don't know how valuable the 4-year degree is. My 4-year degree is in business management. Practically 0 classes had anything to do with technology. So even my 4-year degree, someone can look at it and go, well, you have a 4-year degree of a bachelor's of science. Yeah, but it's in business management. It has nothing to do with networking, operating systems, security, or really anything else I've worked on throughout my entire career. So all it really helped me with was understanding the difference between a capital and a non-capital expenditure. Okay, I can talk at that level. Are we buying or are we leasing? I'm with you. But at that point, my formal degree didn't really help me very much from that perspective. So you really do have to do a kind of a check with employers, see what they're looking for. Sometimes it's worthwhile to go get the degree. Sometimes it isn't. It also depends on what type of degree you're looking at and what they're teaching in that degree. Is this an organization that is teaching you practical skills? Because especially community colleges these days are prepping you for Cisco exams and Microsoft exams, and they're really teaching you technology, whereas a number of 4-year degrees these days aren't really teaching you along those lines. So that's another thing to consider is what type of education, not just that it's a 2 or 4-year degree.
I gotcha. Okay, yeah, because I've heard of people getting like a bachelor's or a master's in IT, and they're not able to find a job because they have to have those certifications. Have you had that experience with other people? Because I've heard it a bunch.
No, I think there's a good argument. We can have a good cage match over whether master's degrees and hires are even worth anything. Because from an IT perspective, they are not. There's nothing in IT that would require some type of elevated knowledge of the world to understand more about what the packets are doing wrong. That I think is probably, there's some arguments to be made about why a master's degree would be useful. But the longer I stayed in IT, the more I realized that formal degree didn't really prep me. I took business calculus calculus, we don't use calculus in IT. That's a class
Yeah, exactly.
that I took twice. Guess why? That have never used from that point on. So it's one of those things where it is a piece of paper. You can wave it around and show people, look, I have a piece of paper. Yay. Does it functionally help you earn more money every year? Maybe, maybe not. Will it help you move up faster in an organization? Probably not at all. But you've at least, there's pluses and minuses. I think from an IT perspective, IT is I don't want to seem flippant or I'm trying to make a description here between these things, but IT, we're sort of the trade plumbers of the technical world. We need to have practical experience on how the water flows and what's inside the water. And if you have that knowledge, people want those skills and they're willing to pay you a lot of money for those skills. The only difference is that we don't have to get ourselves dirty.
Okay, for sure. Yeah, you really hit the nail on the head with that one, honestly. That's exactly what I was looking for. And I really appreciate, you taking the time out of your day to do that. That really does help me. So thank you very much. I
appreciate the call. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Have a great day.
It's a challenge sometimes. I don't want to seem flippant because I went through IT. I am the biggest proponent of information technology you will find. It is a great equalizer. The computers don't care where you came from, what you know, what your family is, what country you live in. It doesn't care about those things. And the upward mobility in IT is unlike any other industry you will find anywhere in the known universe. So I say when I'm talking about IT as plumbing, I'm talking about this in a very, very positive way. And there's nothing more important when the pipes get clogged than to get a good plumber. There's nothing more important when the network gets clogged than to get a good IT person. And companies are willing to pay a lot of money for that. Very, very important. An important consideration as well. In the chat room, very quickly, there were a couple of questions that came through. Let me scroll so I can find the one I was interested in. There was a question about digital certificates in cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies obviously use encryption and digital certificates extensively. When you're building out your wallet, you're creating a public-private key pair. And when you're sending information to somebody, you're signing it with your private key. So there are extensive uses of digital signatures in cryptocurrency. So that's one that both the encryption side, the digital signature side, the hashing piece of it, incredibly important, used extensively. That's effectively all the blockchain is a series of very standardized and open and available and distributed forms of digital signatures. It's really what those are. Every type of currency uses a different style and a different format and a different way to store this information on the blockchain. But it is extensively used. So that's a good. I'm glad you're thinking along those lines because that's exactly the way you should be thinking about it. Is Momo's Pizza still good? The person who owned Momo's unfortunately passed away. I think his family took over after that. I'm not sure how it's been. I've been back a couple times since then. It's still the best pizza ever. Better than that New York or Chicago stuff. I look forward to your calls and letters. Back to the phone lines. 715 area code. Do I know how to get everybody hyped up? Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm Tony, calling from Wisconsin.
Hey, Tony from Wisconsin. What can we do for you?
I just wanted to call saying thank you for all the material you've posted out there.
Thank you so much.
About a year and a half ago, I started with the A+ and managed to pass that, both of those exams with the 900 series. A little bit later, I passed the Network Plus, also with your material and a couple other sources there.
Nice.
And then I was almost ready for the Security Plus, and then I got that first job. So, and again, it was through connections. I keep hearing these stories about people with connections, and, it was through a friend. I got that first IT job.
Perfect.
And last week, I managed to pass that Security Plus, so I got all three of those done.
Nice.
looking forward to the next thing. So thank you very much, Professor.
Congratulations on those three. Congratulations on the job, and thanks for letting everyone else know that I'm not crazy when I say things like that. That it really is. It's as much. It's not who you know more than what you know, but it's just as important to have some connections out there, to have a good LinkedIn, to have networking with other people, and really ask around when you're trying to get that job. It's remarkable how much easier it is because other people want you to succeed as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think the scariest part of the new job from my previous one is I'm having to talk to people. But I've certainly gotten used to it, and I really do enjoy it. I used to have something where I'd walk into it and be the same thing every day, and I was comfortable with that. Going to IT, it's a different puzzle every day. Looking at the situation seems like a puzzle to me, and I try to figure it out. But at the same time, it's real people's lives just trying to use these, the devices to get their work done.
That's a great way to put it. It's just a different puzzle every day. If you're somebody who loves puzzles, you're definitely in the right place.
Mm-hmm. Can I send a quick shout out to someone?
Please.
Yes, I want to just shout out to my wife and my kids for their support. I obviously could not have done it without them, especially the wife. Spending so many hours just going out to the library or somewhere quiet to study. So thank you.
Good for you. It's great to have good support at home for all of those things. I will also say Mrs. Professor Messer is incredibly patient considering the craziness that goes on this side of the camera as well. So it's always great to have somebody who's in your corner rooting for you. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate the call. What a great story. This is one of those things, though, that I've said over and over and over again. So if you haven't built your LinkedIn, go get your LinkedIn, go set it up properly. Don't put the crazy pictures on. This is a professional positioning of who you are and what you are doing. This is not where you put pictures from the party. This is not where you put pictures of the family. This is your professional online persona. So this is where you can start grouping together and connecting with people you know. And the better you are about networking with people and working with people, the better of a technologist you're going to be. So make sure you consider that. Let's go South Florida. Down to Cayocho, the 954 area code. Not quite that far. I guess you're in Broward. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from?
Hey, Professor. My name's Luke calling from Fort Lauderdale. How you doing?
Hey, see, Broward County checking in. Thanks for calling.
Yes. I know you're familiar with the Los Olas area.
So I spent a lot of time living in Pembroke Pines and Miramar, out in Silver Lakes, out in West Broward. So very familiar.
Awesome. Where are you located now? Are you in North Florida now, or are you still?
I am in North Florida. We're based out of Tallahassee. I grew up here, so I moved down to Miami chasing a girl. I caught her, and then I made her come back up here. So Mrs. Professor Messer was born in Hialeah, born in Miami at Jackson, and lived in Hialeah. And we lived down there 10 years and then made it back up here. And who knows what's next?
Perfectly executed plan.
Thank you, sir.
You I just wanted to start off by first thanking you. I got my A+ in December. I used your videos and also had your course notes as well. I really, really appreciate everything you do. I was referred to you. That's how I first found out about you. And what you do, the amount of lives you probably have changed is just, thank you for everything you do. I want to start off by saying that.
I appreciate that.
Very appreciated. And I know you touch a lot of people, including myself on one of them.
That's very motivating. I appreciate that.
Definitely. Now, I did have a question, just from your perspective, because I know you're more of the expert and you have the years of experience. My ultimate goal is to be in security. I know that's the first one you took. I remember a video I was watching. You said that you didn't do the A+ first. You actually did the Security Plus, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Initially, I started studying the Network Plus because in my mind, I was like, well, maybe I should, before I get to security, maybe I should get networking down fully and maybe try to work as a network administrator for a couple of years and then get into security. Do you think that would be, a wise choice, or do you think I should kind of just, if I'm passionate about security, just go straight to security? Or do you think the networking experience actually would make me a better security personnel?
I've said... Go ahead and finish what you were saying.
Go ahead. Oh, no, I just want to know, because I don't want to feel like, hey, you should, if you want to do security, just jump into security, or if you want to be a master at your craft, maybe you should get to know networking on that level as well too. I'm kind of at that crossroads right there, because I got the A+. A+ kind of touches a little bit of everything, but I really want to get into security. But I'm willing to put that on hold if that path will open up a better opportunity for me.
The challenge we have with IT security and people who are doing the protection of the data and the applications all day, every day, is that it requires such an existing knowledge of operating systems and networks, a huge part of IT security. On my first IT job was in college here in Tallahassee. When I worked at Florida State, I was part of the supercomputer operations. I would go in on the weekends. I was sort of that person waiting for printouts and tapes to be mounted on the mainframe. But my first job outside of school, once I graduated, was in South Miami working for a computer company and effectively being a sort of a remote tech, kind of a glorified delivery person at times, but sometimes doing actual technical things as I drove around Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County. The challenge I always ran into was that it's all about figuring out what you're going to be doing next. And one of the challenges you'll find with IT security is there's not a lot of entry-level jobs in IT security relative to the rest of IT. I mean, there's a very small number of entry-level jobs in IT security relative to the rest of IT. You might be able in South Florida to find a security operations center, a SOC job, where they're looking for entry-level people because there's just not enough entry-level people, or really people in security in general. So they're just looking for somebody they can fill a seat with, and they'll train you the things they need to train you on to get you running with those skills that you're going to be using in security. If you can find one of those jobs, it kind of gets you jump-started in cybersecurity very quickly. But even then, you're still going to have to go back and learn everything you can about Windows and Linux. You're going to have to go back and learn, and even probably more importantly, learn everything you can about networking. I mentioned that one of the jobs that I moved into once I finished, it was sort of outside the scope of South Florida, but I got a job working for Network General. They're not around anymore. They were acquired by McAfee, but I worked as a systems engineer. And so I would go to all of these really big companies up and down the East Coast of the United States and talk to their networking people about managing their network, monitoring the protocols, understanding the protocol analysis process, and really working them with network management, trying to make them more familiar on the network management side. Then I moved up from that job. Eventually, after working there for about 10 years on and off, I got a job working at Palo Alto Networks as a systems engineer with their next generation firewalls. And we kind of hit that point just as the industry was really rapidly transitioning into a much more secure environment. And so I would go back into these companies that I was into 10 years ago, except now I'm showing up with a security product, but it turns out I was talking to exactly the same people. They had moved from networking into IT security. And so I'm seeing the same faces. I'm exchanging the same business cards. We're talking with the same folks we already knew. We're working with the same people we'd already worked with, because the natural progression tends to be you learn and become an expert on the network side before you ever move up and are able to apply that knowledge into the IT security side. Is the market still that way? I don't know, because I'm not in that market to that level anymore. But I would tell you that the skills you need to be in IT security are a foundational set of skills that you're going to have to get by understanding the operating systems and understanding the network. And so I spent most of my career prior to that getting Microsoft certifications, understanding Linux, building out Linux systems, and working extensively with protocol analysis and really understanding what was going on over the network. Because then once you get into security, You have to understand how to set up routes. Most of the firewalls you're installing are layer 3 devices. You have to understand dynamic routing. You have to understand route redistribution. You have to understand how to set up the routes properly for IPsec tunnels. So not only do you need to understand the security part for how to build the tunnel, you then have to understand, how do I get data from point A to point B across the tunnel and troubleshoot that process? How do you set up multi-factor authentication with the existing infrastructure that you have? How do you set up all the logs that need to be gathered and set up the SIM and send the data via syslog to that SIM? That's usually that's the security team doing that. All of those skills are networking skills. They're all things you have to be able to know networking really well to make the security part of that work really well. And so that's why I often tell people, if you want to get into IT security, learn everything you can and become an expert on the networking side. And that's a much easier and, in many cases, a more typical path into IT security. But that doesn't mean it's the only path. If I've learned anything in IT, it's that there's never one way to get from point A to point B. There's often multiple paths. So find the way that makes sense for what you're trying to do, but just know that eventually, if you want to get into IT security, you're going to need to know operating systems, you're going to need to know the networking, and you're going to need to overlay the security piece on top of that.
Definitely makes a lot of sense. And just to say this currently, even the entry level positions, especially South Florida and other locations. I've seen one in Port St. Lucie not too long ago. But even the entry level ones, they ask for about a year or two experience. Some of them say 3. So it's kind of like, well, how do I get in? But thanks for the clarity and perspective of that. I'll continue doing studying for the Network Plus, and I'll use that now. Now, to get like a junior network administrator role or something like that, just to get in networking, is a knock. I know you mentioned SOC. Is a knock a good way to do it?
Absolutely,
or
yeah.
Maybe will the Net Plus help with those kind of jobs, junior network administrator or knock?
It probably would. If you're looking at it sort of an entry level on the traditional side of help desk, then probably a Network Plus works fine. But if you're getting into a NOC, a specialized networking role, and you want to be working with routers and switches and learning those protocols, then you're going to need to get a Cisco certification regardless. CCNA is going to be automatic. So you need to get that CCNA, and most employers will tell you that if you want to work here, you're going to need that CCNA, the Cisco Certified Network Administrator certification. That is, it's probably the industry standard at this point for entry-level networking. It's not an entry-level cert, but if you want to get into networking, that is the starting point that proves that you're ready to really learn more about the networking environment. And there's a lot of other Cisco certifications you can learn past that point to be able to figure out the pieces of it. I think that would be a much better use of time if you want to get into security, that the path to security is through networking. Eventually, you're going to have to take the CCNA. So why not jump into it? Now, for people who are just hiring, if you walk into a traditional help desk and you say, I've got my CCNA, you could be positioning yourself as overqualified. So you have to watch out for that. But in South Florida, you've got a lot of options. And by the way, for anybody listening, and I'm glad you brought this up, is that if you see any job that says you need this much experience or this many years, you should ignore that. If you believe that the job offering, the job post, matches your requirements, regardless of how many years of something they're looking for, you should put your resume in. You should not be the one that decides you're not qualified for the job. Let them decide if you're qualified or not for the job. Maybe that was just to weed out people that they didn't really want to see, but maybe they saw something in your resume that really caught their interest, and they were willing to dismiss or not weigh on the number of years of experience as much as perhaps other things they saw on your resume. And also in South Florida, you have such a diverse areas to go to for entry-level positions. There are tons of hospitals. There are industry like you've got all of the big cruise lines are there. You've got state and local government is enormous in that part of the state. You've got FPL, which has tons of employees and tons of networks. You've got banks everywhere you look, especially in the Broward, Palm Beach County area. Tons of opportunity for those types of roles. You just need to get into one of those. And as long as you get into one of those, you can then start leveraging that to do whatever you want to do next. That's the important part of IT, is figuring out what you want to do next. And I think you've got lots of opportunity to do that. So if you think you're qualified for the job, send your resume, make it a good resume, tailor it to what they're looking for, customize it to what they want to see, create a cover letter specific to what they want, a great T cover letter. I did a video on this. I did 2 videos, why your resume keeps getting rejected, part 1 and part 2. Make sure you look through both of those so you know what would position you the best for those jobs. And of course, don't forget, sometimes it's not just what you know, it's also who you know. Make sure you take advantage of all the connections that you currently have in the area.
Right. Awesome. Yeah, and you're absolutely right, because and I won't take too much more of your time, but because I'm in when I've done the help desk role here, and that's how I had some experience on knock, because different companies where you're in the industry, they do wear multiple hats. So I have some knock experience now. I'm doing field work now, and I guess that the field work looks like it would be an opportunity for me to transition to like maybe a junior network administrator. So I'll focus on the Net Plus and CCNA, and then I guess after that I can eventually get to maybe the Security Plus to help better position myself, or maybe even I believe Cisco has the Cyber Ops Security.
They do.
Or maybe one of those. But would you recommend maybe probably doing the Security Plus first, because that's more of an entry to prepare me for the Cyber Ops, or is it 2 different kind of paths?
I think they really build on themselves. So I think Security Plus is really the entry level, and the Cisco would probably be the level after that. But I think one of the things that employers look for is some of the things you're doing already. You mentioned being out in the field, going to different places and seeing different things. That's also a valuable set of skills that you don't often see on a job posting, but employers look at that and go, well, this guy's been around. He's seen a lot of different things. He's had to work in a lot of different environments with a lot of different customers. He could bring some of that to the table and help us with what we're doing with our network.
Awesome. Thank you, Professor. I appreciate it.
I appreciate the call. Thanks so much, and best of luck.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You too. It's good to hear from my folks in Broward County. Lived there a number of years. Well, I found my wife in South Florida, so I'm pretty happy with that. I miss the food. Oh, miss the food. Let's go back to the phone calls. Back to Florida, 407, central part of the state. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from?
Hi, is it me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Hi, which name are you calling from?
Oh, great. I'm calling from Florida, Kissimmee, and I'm calling because I'm basically new into this, and I don't know where to start. And I just really want to get into this because I see myself getting a career with the IT. I recently got the CBT Nuggets course, but I think it's too advanced for me because it's the CCNA. And I just didn't understand anything, and I was trying to pay attention to the terms, the this and that, and I was just watching a video,
Right.
So yeah, where should I start?
Well, you've already figured this part out, and I think a lot of people don't understand it, and some of it is confusion you will see on the internet, is that you will tell people, oh, I'm interested in learning about networking, and they'll immediately say, oh, you need your CCNA. But what they don't tell you is the CCNA is not an entry-level certification. In no way is the CCNA an entry-level certification. It's probably the next step up from an entry-level certification, and it already expects that you have some practical knowledge or at least some familiarity with networking technologies in general. It probably would be better if you've looked at the CCNA and you're like, I don't know what they're talking about. Perhaps Network Plus would be a better place to start. If you've never worked in IT and you don't have any experience in IT, I really do recommend you look at the information that's in the A+ certification. A+ is what most employers expect you to have as an entry-level cert. It tends to be a very common certification that they're looking for new hires, and it's a great way to get in the door in a lot of places. You're in a good location in Kissimmee. There's a lot of great companies in your area. They all have help desks. They all need entry-level people. And you've got lots of places, lots of options of where you can go with that set of skills. So if I were you and you've already looked at the CCNA and realized, whoa, that's later, that's what we need to do next, I need to focus on now and understanding from the ground up, I think you should focus on the A+, or at least have a look at those objectives, see if that fits a little bit better with what you're looking for. And as I recommended to other callers, have a look at the jobs that are available in your area. Make sure that the employers are asking for the A+ and other skills, and that might help you decide what direction to go as well.
Yeah, because I was being a little bit greedy. Because I saw some videos saying, oh, the CompTIA A+ is not what you're looking for, what you should be doing. And I was like, watching your videos, I was getting it because it's common knowledge. I'm on a computer watching you already. I know how a computer works. I built it myself. So I got something. But when I saw that video and I went to get the CBT Nuggets course for the CCNA, I was like, this is not what I was thinking. So yeah, I'm gonna start how you say that I do the A+. I'm gonna try to get the Network Plus too, and then the CCNA if in the future. So that's a thank you so much, because I was really lost. So now I got an idea where to start and where I'm heading,
Sounds like you're on the right track to me. Best of luck.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
It's one of those things that it's almost frustrating at times because I'm obviously a bit, you could say that I am slanted in what direction I think people should go, and that's legitimate. We can have that argument. But when I see people say, why don't you just start with the CCNA? Well, why are you going for a help desk position? Why aren't you putting yourself in as the CEO? Why aren't you going after that job? That's where all the money is. Well, because there's a pathway. You have to start somewhere and learn as you go. The person who's the CEO started in the mailroom. Very often worked at lower levels in the organization to move up to a level where they really understood everything about what was going on in the company. They have a set of skills they've acquired over time. So for the same reason, you don't start off with a higher level cert with having nothing underneath. At first, nobody's going to hire you on an entry-level position with a CCNA. They're going to say, well, you have the CCNA. You have no practical networking experience. We're not going to let you touch a switch. We're not going to let you touch a router on our production network. You need to have something that you understand the process underneath. There's so much that goes into that. And that's why we have a help desk. That's why we often start people in the help desk so they can start off learning everything they need to get up to a certain point. They learn about the network. They learn about the operating systems. They learn about the processes in the organization, the software that they're using, the applications that are in use, and eventually learning more about all of these, learning more about Windows, learning more about Linux, learning more about the network, and finally getting to a point where it makes sense to get to the CCNA because the next step I want to take is in network management, router administration, whatever that happens to be, with an idea that later on I want to move into security, for example. There is a pathway to all of these things. And there's no shortcuts when it comes to technology. It really is a set of skills you have to know. You can't start off as a systems engineer for a next generation firewall company unless you've done all of these previous jobs, understanding the operating system, understanding the network, understanding security, and finally in that role. I couldn't have jumped into that. It took an entire career of jobs to be at the right place at the right time to meet the exact requirements for that particular role. So that's why I tell people, don't worry so much about other people telling you what you should be doing. Go do the work yourself. Go look at the jobs in your area. What are they asking for? That's the answer to the question, by the way. It's not what everybody else says you should be doing. The people who are hiring and are willing to give you money, what do they say you should be doing? Because that's where you should be going with it. Now, if you do that and every single employer says you should get your CCNA, okay, now I'm with you. Now you should go get the CCNA. But I think what you'll find in most cases is every employer is looking for something for an entry-level position. They're looking for entry-level certifications. They're looking for entry-level knowledge, and then they will help you. They will teach you as you go. There will be on-the-job training. There will be things specific to their environment. They will teach you those pieces. You will never be in a place in IT where you know everything. There will never be a place in IT where you have become knowledgeable on everything that you would ever need to know. If you are in a job in IT and you're comfortable, then you're probably in the wrong job. You need to move into levels of discomfort, and you need to constantly keep doing that, learning more, learning what you don't know, moving into those places where you don't know that information, and then continuing that process. That's the only way that you move up and up and up in IT. And the good part is there's always somewhere to move up. There is always a higher level position. There is always a better job, a different job, a job that pays more, a job that has more fitting with what I want to do for my life at home. You get to make those decisions. And this is, as I mentioned before, unlike any other industry in the world. It's better than transportation and manufacturing. And you'll probably be working for one of those companies, but you'll be on the IT side. And that's the thing that gives you leverage. It gives you upward mobility. It gives you a better career. It gives you more money. It gives you a better foundation for your family. It's the win-win. How you get there, there's many ways to do it. There's easy ways and there's hard ways. But the best way to do it is to find out from the employers, what are you looking for? What do I need to have to be able to fit? And if you aren't even sure after doing that, well, if they're on LinkedIn, send them a LinkedIn saying, hey, I saw your job posting. I saw that you posted one about this help desk position. I think I sort of fit this, but what would you really want me to have in order to fit best in your organization? Reach out to them. All they have to do is not answer you. But they may say, oh, this person really is interested in learning these things. Okay, you need to know this. You need to know this. You come back with that. We'll have a conversation, see if you fit well. We can move to the next step in the interview process. That makes sense to me. Reach out to the employers. They want good people working for them as badly as you want to work for them. So make that work. Figure out the details. And there's always a way to go with that. Well, that brings us to the end of another study group. Thank you so much for your calls, your questions in the chat room. We talk about everything here, but there's always something going on. Don't forget, on the Professor Messer website, we have plenty to look at through the rest of the month. All the Network Plus videos are there. We're also got the vouchers available. Don't forget about the discounted vouchers on the website at professormesser.com/vouchers. Always check the calendar for the next set of events at professormesser.com/calendar. And now that we're rolling out the new Discord, meet us over there. We can keep chatting and keep this going through the rest of the month. I'm always on there, professormesser.com/Discord. Thanks for being here. We will see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. Thanks, everybody.